Americans David Kessler and Jack Goodman's European trip is cut short in the North England moors when they fall foul of a lycanthrope. David awakens injured in London and quickly begins to lose resistance to his carnivorous lunar activities. Reception to John Landis's An American Werewolf in London was a mixed bag. Popular at the box office but dismissed by critics, it went on to have a huge influence on the genre thanks to its deft mixture of horror and comedy and its groundbreaking Oscar-winning makeup effects. My name is Luke, and roaming the countryside with me are Matt.
A naked American man stole my balloons.
And Westy.
You made me miss.
All the Right Movies are here to talk five-pointed stars and full moons, but we will not be threatened by a walking meatloaf. Hi everyone, you're listening to All the Right Movies, a fang-sprouting, all-over-body-head podcast on classic and hit films.
Nice.
On this episode, we're talking about John Landis's groundbreaking horror comedy classic, An American Werewolf in London.
Mm-hmm.
This is our 55th episode, actually, which means that we're now celebrating 2 years of 80RM podcasts. How about that for a milestone?
Wowzers.
Massive.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Big stuff. So before we get going, I've just got a few stats for you. A quick summary of the last 2 years.
Love a stat. You fucking love a stat.
Yeah.
Like,
I love a stat. Stat or abandon.
Oh, man.
Our first 2 episodes were Jaws and Ghostbusters, and they released on the 4th of July 2019. And we've released a classic episode every 2 weeks ever since.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time, we've been listened to in a load of different countries around the world.
Right.
Do you want to have a guess at how many we've been listened to? For context, just before you start, there are just under 200 recognised countries in the world, 195, 196, depending on your source. So,
Right.
Matt, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I will go with 45.
45. Ooh, what about you, Westy?
I will go with 48.
Oh, I tell you what, fellas, you're way off.
really?
134.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
A worldwide share of 68%, so we're covering the globe.
We are.
Globe trotting. Harlem
Even we,
Globetrotters.
even we can't even understand each other, so it's an absolute mystery to me.
Our top 5 countries are typically the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and Ireland. But we're also big in India, the Netherlands, France, Spain, and Germany. So a big shout out to everyone around the world who's listening, wherever you may be.
Yeah, massive.
I'd love to say thanks in a foreign language, but I don't know any.
You don't know any. Westy, do you know how to thank you? Bonjour? No,
merci.
that's hello. Merci. There you go. There's the difference.
There we go.
Yeah, that's me not being racist.
Oh, danke Sean. There we go. German.
There's
Remember
France
that one.
turning straight off.
Danke. Yeah. Thanks. Cheers. That's
Yeah.
universal, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. We'd also love to hear from you if you think you're in the most remote or unlikely place in the world that you're listening to. Get in touch.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be amazing.
If you can.
Well, if they're listening, they must have the internet.
Well, I think so. Yeah, we'd send like a carrier pigeon out.
Added to all of that, we started our Patreon account in June last year. We put out a number of exclusive episodes on there, starting with our conversation on the James Bond films. That's the one where you called everyone pricks, Westy, you remember?
I do remember vividly, yes. Yeah. Although that does happen quite a lot, but it's cut out, so it's fine.
So we did a similar thing at the end of the year on a Patreon episode, but do you fellas want to have a guess at how many films that we've covered across all formats in the last 2 years, but not including that Bond one, because we didn't really talk about specifics, so it was just in general.
Okay.
Ah, jeez.
Oh, this is fast maths, isn't it?
Fast
Which
maths.
I'm terrible at. 205.
205, Matt?
187.
Ooh, Matt, you're closer, but you're both way off. It's
okay.
128 films.
Well, that's
Right.
all right.
I mean, that's on average, it's more than one a week, so I think we're doing all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and the amount of times we watch them like 4 or 5 times each, so it does feel about 300
Exactly.
films.
So that's including this episode. It also includes 4 ranking episodes where we talk about 10 films each in each episode. So
Yeah.
big boy stuff.
Yeah,
Yep.
lots to get your teeth into if this is the first one.
Loads. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
you've just turned off because we've just been dribbling on for the last 5 minutes.
We're absolutely class. This might be good, this one.
And while we're on the subject of that, you've heard us talking about it before, I'm sure. And if you're a new listener, then listen up. If you want to support us on what we do here, you can help keep us going by signing up to be an All the Right Movies patron. You'll get access to those 128 films that we've covered, and we add to that every month with our Patreon exclusive double features show. So please, everyone, go to patreon.com/All the Right Movies to show your support. Thanks.
Yes, please do.
Yes, please, please.
Gracias.
Now, though, back to the matter at hand. Westy, why
Yes.
do you want to talk about An American Werewolf in London?
This film has got a lot to answer for. This is, when you're too young, we always say this, but this is the one, the definitive one, and I've had to have like a word with my mum about it so I get my facts right. So I was 9 years old. I was over my cousins. He talked about it. My mum came in and he actually said to her, it'll be fine for him to watch it. It's not that bad. And obviously he was taking the piss. So my mum got it on VHS, went home, and my dad had watched it on night shift, and he came in and he saw the VHS I got off my cousin. And he said, son, this is completely up to you. If you want to watch it, then you have to watch it all the way through. You can't turn it off.
Did he give you 20 fags as well?
20 fags and a can of Labatt. Kind of skull over my head. But he's like, no, if you want to watch it, you're going to have to commit to it, and you watch it all the way through. And I was like, yeah, fine, okay, no problem. And it's affected us ever since. This is the reason I am the way I am, I think. It was deeply, deeply horrifying, and it wasn't funny. It was just horrifying. And it's taken a lot for us to come back and watch it again, like my later teens. And even watching it for this, it just brings back all of these memories of just being so desperate to watch it and then so regretful almost immediately. It was just like, it was places we used to visit. We used to go for long weekends in like Yorkshire Dales, and it looks the same.
Yeah.
It was just too close to home for us, and it just felt very, very real. Whereas like Texas Chainsaw, America, you can kind of put a bit of distance between that. But this was like in my backyard, and it wasn't comfortable at all. So I'm exercising demons here more than I am talking about a film I really enjoy. So I want to see what you guys get out of it. But for me, it's still like really deep down triggers this anxiety. But I can really appreciate it for what it is now. But it's still fucking hell. It was terrifying at the time.
Fantastic. What about you, Matt?
Complete opposite, because it's just so much fun, isn't it? It's just an absolute ride, this film, and it's a film I would recommend to absolutely anyone and everyone, and I'm very, very confident if I did that they would enjoy it, because if you want to get the scares out of it, the scares are really well done. If you want to get the comic aspect out of it, the jokes are really funny. And it's a film that when I watched it for the first time, and I was a bit older than Westy, I think, when I did, I was already like well aware of its reputation, and it wasn't a case of one of these films where I had to watch it a few times to get it. As soon as I watched it, I was like, right, I can see why people love this film. I can see why it is so adored by so many people. And I think in that horror comedy genre, this one is still top level. Like, if you didn't have this, would you have Shaun of the Dead?
Definitely
Don't know if you would. A huge influence on that. So, yeah, it's a film that's got loads of great aspects to it, and it should be a good one to get into.
Yeah. I'm pretty much, my story is the same as Westy's, really.
Really?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I wasn't like at your cousins or anything like that.
No, I was going to say, like, we met in therapy when we were 10.
But the film's like really, really deep rooted for me. It's one of the first films that I remember from a very young age, but not that I watched it that young, but we had it at home on VHS. And I just remember that title, An American Werewolf in London. What a title.
And the cover's great as well. That VHS cover is fucking brilliant, yeah.
Brilliant. And I think I saw the opening on the moors when I was very young, and this was around the time that Thriller was big as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was fucking terrified of Jackson in that music video. And he was a werewolf, and I knew that word from somewhere else. So I was just very, very wary of this film for that title alone. Really deep-rooted. And in the years since, I've watched it loads of times. I love it. It's got a real special place in my heart because as far back as I can remember, it's always been there in one way or another.
Yeah.
And also the film celebrates its 40th anniversary in a few weeks' time, so it's definitely the right time to talk about it.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Luke, I thought for a minute there you want to say as far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a werewolf.
Slams the boot.
That sounds like one of those like 50s B movies. I was a teenage werewolf. An American Werewolf in London was written and directed by John Landis, produced by George Folsey Jr. for Polygram Pictures, distributed by Universal and released on the 21st of August 1981. Filmed on location in Wales and London, it stars David Norton, Griffin Dunn, Jenny Agutter and John Woodvine. Strap yourselves in, our tortured journey starts on the North York moors.
The beginning.
We open on a typically cold Yorkshire moors. Jack and David are on foot having hitched a lift, and after some chat about Debbie Klein's body, they make their way to the Slaughtered Lamb pub. So Matt, the opening Slaughtered Lamb and the subsequent wolf attack on the moors, what do you think?
I think it's great. And firstly, it does make me laugh because Jack kind of alludes to it that these two, they've taken 3 months to tour around Europe, and on their list of places to go is the Yorkshire Moors.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, no disrespect to any of our listeners from Yorkshire. It's a beautiful place, but it's very kind of desolate kind of beauty. So it does make me laugh that this is where they want to go on this 3-month tour.
Yeah.
But what I really love when you get to the Slaughtered Lamb is it really reminds me of Hammer horror films because I'm a huge fan of those. And for me, it's totally got that vibe. You've got the suspicious locals who are harbouring a dark secret in this remote location, and it's just got such a great atmosphere to it already. And it's a bit like a Western when Jack asks what the pentangle is. It's like a Western when like the stranger walks into the saloon and everything just stops dead. Like you almost expect to hear like a record scratch, don't you?
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah. Fantastic.
If you're from this country and you're watching this and you're of a particular age, it's just got so many recognisable faces in there. You've obviously got Brian Glover with his Alamo joke, which is amazing. Yeah. The guy that Westy quoted at the beginning, I love that guy playing darts. He's so furious that he's missed for the first time in his life.
Yeah, David Schofield, that's
David Schofield.
Yes, it is. Yeah, he's in loads of things. And even better, Rick Mail. Very young Rick Mail in there. It's always great to see him.
Always a nice surprise to see his face in it.
It is.
Yeah. Did you know Adrian Edmondson was supposed to be in because John Landis saw them on stage, but Adrian Edmondson just thought he was taking the piss and didn't show up. So that's why he's not in the film. Yeah, but Rick Mail showed up, so that's why he's in there. Spitting beer everywhere. Brilliant.
He is, yeah. It's a great splutter, isn't it, that he does?
Yeah. And that's great. And that's why Frank Oz is in the film, because Frank Oz took him to that comedy show with Mail and Edmondson.
Nice. Right, nice.
Right.
I mean, I'm so glad he's in it. And all those actors together, I think they help really bring home the sense that David and Jack are so out of place. And it is like when you turn 18 and you can legally drink, and I'm sure we've all done it, you just think you can go anywhere, you can just stroll into any pub. Mm-hmm. But then I'm sure we've all done it, we've all gone into one, and within 10 minutes you think, this is not the place for me. You know, I'm not a regular, I really shouldn't be here. And that's what I love about the Slaughtered Lamb. It's totally got that vibe to it.
Yeah.
And I love the attack on the moon as well, because that's so well done. You get that sinking feeling in your stomach when David and Jack realise that they're so lost and they've wandered off that path. And you hear that howling in the background, and you can just hear the nerves start to enter the voices, and all these jokes that they're telling about, like Heathcliff on the moors, the jokes sort of become a bit nervous as well, and the anxiety just builds and builds and builds. And I love that camera shot where it just circles around them.
Fantastic.
Just totally disorientates them as well. And it just brings home that horrible feeling of being lost somewhere where you really, really, really shouldn't be. So a great bit of the Slaughtered Lamb, but this sequence on the moors, I think it's really excellent. It's made all the more effective because there isn't any music to it either.
Yeah. I love that. Like they do like what anybody would do in that situation of fear. They start to make light of things. And David singing like happy songs, a lovely stroll on the moors, tra la 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 la. Isn't this fun? It's not fun.
Yeah. No, it's not like that.
Right at the opening, just want to mention that for a moment. There's just something about that taps into what I was saying earlier. It just means so much to me that I can't quite explain. The dialogue between Jack and David, the typically British location that you talked about, Westy, and that long lingering shot of the fellas walking in the distance with the camera behind them as they're doing the knock-knock thing.
Yeah.
Just amazing. And that dissolve when they're walking across the moors and it's getting darker, it just stirs up so much in me. And I think it goes down to, it's about an hour from where we live. I know it's not filmed in North Yorkshire, but I didn't know that as a kid. And it's just really relatable, recognise the landscape based on like family trips when I was a kid. So it's just built into me, this opening scene. It just means so much.
Yeah.
Nice little bit of foreshadowing at the start when Jack and David are boxed in with the sheep. Literally lambs to the slaughter.
Lambs to the slaughter,
Lovely.
Yeah. Or wolves in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. What about you, Westy?
Yeah, it's great. Like you've said, look, it's very familiar. The setting, the guys in the pub, the actual pub itself, like they've got that spot on. It's just brilliant. Like to the point where what Matt was saying, we used to use that if we're going anywhere and it was like that. We'd go fucking outside the
Right, the
slaughtered
slaughtered
lamb.
lamb. Yeah. I've said that
Just
before.
to say, no matter where you go, if you go to a nightclub or something and there's nobody in, like fucking outside the slaughtered lamb. But like the sign outside's really badass.
Yeah, it's great,
Looks
yeah.
class. You kind of associate with the characters straight away. They're very likable straight away, and you know that you're on their side. But I mean, they don't have much to do they? Fucking watch for the moon and stay off the moors. That's it. Then they fuck
Disregard everything.
Like, absolutely. Well, all 2 rules, and that's it. You can't do anything about the moon anyway. So
Beware the moon. That's really vague.
Beware the moon. That's really vague. Don't know what to do with that. But stay off the moors. I can definitely do that. That's not a problem. But it's the way that they get lost. It just, you get lost as well because you're in the conversation and you're walking around and you kind of just go, oh shit, yeah, I've got lost the same way that they have. And Landis does that really well. You don't see that close up of the foot leaving the tarmac and hitting the grass and going on to the moors and making
But
it
they're
obvious.
disorientated by the rain as well.
Yeah,
That comes at
exactly,
that
which
point.
works really, really well. But I love the performances in the pub. It's just, to me, it feels a little bit old now. It hasn't really aged very well. It's very stereotypical. It's very much a film of its time.
Yeah.
And I think the British are portrayed a little bit too kind of common, flat caps, Yorkshire, blah, 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 blah. And it's really on the nose. It's like an episode of Bottom almost in there. Especially with Brian Glover just being the same in everything. But the plane was still too heavy. Brilliant.
But it's still too heavy.
Heavy. And that attack is fucking savage. I hadn't seen it for a good couple of years and I watched it back and David running away. I never understood that when I was a kid, but I fucking get that now. No chance out of there. But then, he's got that remorse kicks in and he goes back and you think, don't go back. And then when you see that shot,
the effects
that shot,
are amazing.
Jack, and he's just lying there, just covered in blood. And I was always confused about the dead naked guy because I didn't know the theory of werewolves or anything behind it at the time. So I was thinking, well, who the fuck's this guy? And that I just ignored that for a good couple of years until got my head around the whole kind of mythos behind it. You're like, oh yeah, that's actually the werewolf. But I like the way that that's not embellished at all. It's just there. If you don't get it, you don't get it. That's it. End of story. But he just keeps it dead simple. There's a werewolf. They shot it. He's dead. He's been bitten. He's dead now. Right, we're going to London. Fantastic.
Griffin Dunn's face when he's being attacked, he totally sells the shit out of it. He's awesome, screaming and shouting and swearing.
Really, really goes for it.
Amazing. When they were filming it, Rick Baker, the makeup effects artist, he told Griffin Dunn to be careful with the head because it was quite delicate.
Yeah.
And dismissing his request, Dunn tore the foam rubber werewolf face off it in the first take. Baker was really fucking pissed off that he was thinking about giving the wolf head hard teeth just to batter the shit out of him. But the film was shot sequentially to give Rick Baker enough lead-up time to get the makeup effects right for the monster moments later on in the film. So this wolf attack in the opening scene was just half a wolf on a wheelbarrow, just smashing.
Brilliant. Imagine if the camera just panned back with him screaming. Someone with a wheelbarrow over top.
But I think you can tell, knowing that, I think because every time the wolf attacks all the way through the film, it always just comes in sideways and hits somebody on the shoulder.
It does. Like, on a wheelbarrow. It's amazing that. Like,
your howl in the credits there, Westy, was fantastic.
Yes. Thank you.
And that was recorded live as well.
Yes, it was.
The wolf howl in this film, that was made up of a few different elements. John Landis said, I wanted a weird, eerie ambience for the night sounds. So that wolf howl you hear was actually made up of about 9 different sounds, including a wolf, a lion, a panther, and even a locomotive.
I heard it was an elephant backwards.
Yeah, and then they played it backwards, I think. Well, he said 9 things, so an elephant will be in there as well.
Well, amazing.
Yeah, and it sounds just like a wolf howl. Somehow I can't believe any of those things.
But yeah, I've got all these things in the room and I just walk around kicking them one at a time. That's why it works so well. Elephant was a nightmare. Nobody talks about it.
Well done.
Oh,
Thanks.
that isn't encouraging people to sign up for Patreon. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I know. Boom, boom, Westy.
Loads more where that came from.
Very good. That scene with the wolf attack, that was filmed just outside Windsor Castle. Griffin Dunn said, "We were in the Queen's backyard. I kept picturing her trying to get to sleep while hearing this kid being savagely murdered take after take after take in our own backyard." I just want to go back to the slaughtered lamb for a moment. You mentioned Brian Glover. I just love how much he is enjoying telling that Alamo joke.
Oh, it's his spotlight, isn't it?
He loves it. He's holding court, and there's so much protest from everybody. Like they've heard it like a million times. All right, I shan't tell it then.
Yeah.
But then as soon as the punchline comes, they're rolling around like drunken sailors. They fucking love it.
Oh, there's always a guy like that in your local, isn't there? There's always that guy who sits at the end of the bar quiet, and then all of a sudden it gets to about 5 to 10, and I go, oh, for fuck's sake, here's Terry.
And while we're on the slaughtered lamb, we've got our first question from one of our patrons. And that's another benefit of being an ATRM patron. You can be part of the show and ask us a question. Our first is from Kenny Morrison. Hello, Kenny.
Hello, Kenny.
He asks, or he says first, American Werewolf in London features famously the slaughtered lamb. Which movie pub would you guys like to have a night out in? Great question. Matt, do you want to go first?
It's a great question.
So, pub to me, that's obviously a British thing, so I'd disregard like bars from American films I'm seeing in this country for this question. And the first thing that like occurred to me is like more often than not, pubs are seen as like quite threatening places to be. Like this one, there's a couple in Withnail and I, and they get threatening both of those pubs. And I was tempted to go with the
Perfume ponds.
His fucking legs it out the door. Amazing.
Which fucker said that? I was tempted to go with the Green Man from The Wicker Man, because you've got Britt Ekland in there, obviously, as the barmaid.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
but then she'd be banging the walls all night when you're trying to get a good night's skip. I'm just going to be having that. Just, leave it alone for one night, Pet. Come on. But also occurred to me, Edgar Wright really loves pubs in his films. Hot Fuzz, you've got The Crown. That looks like a really lovely country pub.
Yeah.
Obviously, The World's End, that's got 12 of them. But the one I'm going to go for is the Winchester from Shaun of the Dead.
Very nice.
Purely because John has a Breville out the back and he can do me a toasty whenever I want. And I bloody love a toasty.
They've got some hug lump behind the bar as well.
Yeah. And the shooter.
And a rifle.
Yeah.
Shooter.
We can talk about dogs not looking up. See,
exactly.
That's true.
Yeah. Jukebox on random.
Very nice. What about you, Westy?
Like what Matt said there, we're going pubs, or can I go a little bit further? Because I definitely could have guessed both of yours.
Okay.
Like, I wish I'd done that, because I knew Matt was going to go for the Winchester.
Okay.
But I would say, are you going to go for Pat's Place or Cocktails of Dreams from Cocktail?
I'm actually going to go with Cell Block from Cocktail.
Oh, yeah, amazing. I fucking knew you would.
I can't believe you guessed it.
I guessed the film. I got the wrong pub, but fuck me. That was good. All right. I'll go. I'm really torn. But I would want a really good night, and I'd want it to last a long time, and I'd want to be entertained. So I'd probably go for the Titty Twister out of Dusselton.
Lovely.
This is my kind of place. Or the Double Deuce.
Yeah, the Double Deuce. I was thinking that as well. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, as you called it out then, Westy, I'm shamed into saying that it is Cell Block from Cocktail.
I so would have got the Winchester for Matt as well. I wish I'd have done that at the start.
I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, not that it's really important, not that it's like a key point that you need to know about me.
Fucking backpedal this now. It's fine. Leave it. You don't need an explanation. Just leave it. It's good enough.
I'm a big fan of Cocktail. And
Oh God!
I mean, it is an awful place, but it's where Brian Flanagan and Douglas Coughlin get their first gig, and they're trying to make it big. But also Gina Gershon's in there as well, and she's an absolute
fantastic. Delight. But let's be honest. let's be honest. People who really like American Werewolf in London don't like Cocktails, so let's just get off of the get off the subject. You do, you're a fucking freak.
Wow. Back to this film then.
Yes.
Despite being set in the North York movies, this sequence was actually filmed in the Black Mountains area of Wales. The fictional village of East Proctor was actually a place called Cricketon, around 20 miles north of the Black Mountains. And the pub that was in the village was a pub, but it wasn't called the Slaughtered Lamb. And the interior shots were in the Black Swan in Surrey. That's just outside London as well. The continuity, because it's all over the place, I still think it's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
The plane is still too heavy.
So, having survived the attack, David wakes up in a London hospital. We're introduced to Dr. Hirsch and Nurse Price, and things start to get very, very strange. David has some vivid nightmares, the worst of which involves a home invasion by some Uzi-toting Nazi zombies. And then Jack pays David a little hospital visit as well. So, Westy, what do you think of this sequence?
This is the one, isn't it?
Oh.
You know, Nazi, werewolf, zombie, pig, bastards with fucking Uzis. Horrible.
Bastards.
The wolf stuff I could probably deal with, but this stayed with me for a very, very long time. Just that image of them, and it was just so unrelenting. It's properly overly lit. It's like almost like an American sitcom when I watch it now, like that 70s show or something.
Yeah.
Especially that wide angle when he answers the door and it's just blowing them away. And it's like, Jesus Christ, this is absolutely ridiculous. And when he shoots the kids,
savage.
you don't see it, but then it cuts to them on the floor in front of the fire and they're absolutely covered in blood.
Yeah.
It's like, what? And then finally like slits David's throat. It's like, fucking hell. Absolutely unbelievable. But that was Rick Baker in that mask by David slitting his throat.
Yeah.
And he couldn't see anything, so everyone was a little bit nervous. It's fucking madness, but it works really, really well.
Crazy.
It jars you out of the whole film, but it doesn't knock the film off course. It's kind of really entertaining, but you never want to see anything like it again.
No.
It's just
it's
like,
shocking.
It's shocking, and it stays with you but at the same time now I do find it quite funny. But at the time, I really didn't. And then, you know, you've got the really, really great scene when it goes to the hospital. But you've got that orderly who's brilliant when he's describing the breakfast. He's like, good stuff there. Now you it all up and I'll be back for the dishes when you finish. And he's like, over the top, you got eggs, you got bacon. No, he's a lovely guy.
He's a lovely guy.
And then Jack appears. The words that are coming out of his mouth don't make any sense to the way that he looks. He's just so effervescent. He's just so happy. He wants a bit of toast. And he's like, David. It's just really, really good. You hurting my feelings. It dips it straight in the egg. Fantastic. Yeah. And then you kind of think, is he losing his mind or is he not? Or is this now taking a bit of a turn so it's a bit more metaphorical, or is this real? Because what I'm seeing, I don't understand. But that makeup, when you first see that, like flaps of skin.
That flappy skin is the stuff that is the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah. And Landis had a scene where he ate the toast and it came out of his throat, but he had to cut that to make it an R rating, which that would have been
That's
great.
devastating. That needs to be in there, doesn't it?
It needs to be in there. Everything he cut out to make it an R needs to be back in there, in my opinion. But
totally,
we've just gone through this dream sequence that we don't quite know what the fuck's going on, and it's perfect because it drops you right into that world, and you are part of it, and you want to see more.
Yeah, amazing. That sequence with the Nazi zombies. I mean, it's just absolutely bananas. They're in there swiftly, absolutely no mercy whatsoever, spraying gunfire everywhere, and within a flash, they're setting fire to the house with everybody dead. Like within 20 seconds. And David's only spared momentarily just to see his entire family annihilated.
Yeah, classic Nazi behaviour.
Yeah, bastards.
Unfortunate.
So on the surface, I mean, it's just this amazingly bonkers nightmare, but looking at it from a different angle, a Jewish family being terrorised by a gang of murderous Nazis, not a stretch to think that thought is buried in the subconsciousness of a 20-something Jewish fella. We know he's Jewish thanks to Nurse Gallagher's Peepin' Tom act in the hospital. And this is 1981, not 40 years before this. This was a reality for so many, not a nightmare. So because David's transitioning to this other being, the wolf has grabbed a hold of this deep-rooted fear in Jewish culture and manifested itself into fucking rabid zombie Nazis. It's terrifying stuff.
Yeah, it is terrifying. I mean, he would have heard the stories from his parents and his grandparents, and it would have been deep-seated just in his psyche. Yes.
Definitely.
What do you think, Matt?
I've always had the feeling that these sequences came to Landis really, really early on, and he was just looking for the right project where he could fit them into. Because like they're just great concepts to have like a nightmare, but it's a nightmare within a nightmare. That's an amazing idea. He just executes it so well because, like you guys are saying, it's just an absolute what the fuck moment. It's nothing to do with werewolves here. It's Nazi zombies, and like you're kind of saying, the first few times I totally missed the Jewish connection. Like, what's this got to do with anything? But once you realise that, either from the dialogue or I think you can see a menorah in the house at one point.
Right.
Yeah.
And once you make that connection, it just adds a little bit to it, but it's not over the top. It doesn't like hammer that point home, and I really like that about that. But the whole thing, it just feels like the worst kind of nightmare where everything just feels and looks really normal and safe and suburban and homely where you're safe. And then just these awful things are just out of nowhere. And the noise that they make, that screeching, the absolute carnage that they release, like how bloody this scene is, always surprises me no matter how many times I've seen it. I'm like, shit, this really goes really dark, like, especially with the kids and that. And so because it's so nasty, you're just so relieved to wake up from that nightmare along with David. So then that sucker punch where you're in another nightmare and Alex just gets it in the chest. You're just like, shit, fucking hell. Where's this film going to take me? It's like all bets are off. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Do you think he's lifted that from like the end of Carrie?
Yes.
Yeah, he said it was inspired by Carrie and also the Louis Buñuel film from 1972, The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. He said there was a lift and drop from that film.
Right. It really works. Like, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is.
When Alex gets stabbed and her body's like convulsing with the knife coming in and out, that's a great touch, that.
Yeah, massive.
It is. It's all great. And so is Jack coming back as a corpse. Again, it's just a great concept, and it's one you can imagine he thought of quite early on. Like, that would be quite funny and a quite interesting way to do it. Now I've just got to get the film around it. Yeah. And it works so well. The makeup is incredible. All those like deep gouges in his neck. But I just love how Jack's character hasn't changed one bit. He's still Jack. He's still so laid back, asking for that toast, talking about his funeral, and talking about Debbie Klein, like who she slept with afterwards. He's like, Mark Levine, that asshole. Like, of all the things that's happened to him, this is like the most offensive. Debbie Klein has slept with someone else, not the fact he's been brutally murdered.
The thing about that as well is when he says, like, your parents came to my funeral, so are they not bothered about David then? I'll go to his mate's funeral, who he's travelling with, and then just not bother getting in touch with him. It's fine.
Yeah. But I like how then balances all these jokes, these funny bits with the serious stuff. He's straight in there telling David, you've got to kill yourself. Yeah. That's the only way out of it. There's no other way out. He doesn't give him any other options. It's straight in his face. Yeah, two great scenes, a bit of exposition, but the exposition works really well. And it's funny at the same time as being really, really dark and horrible.
I know that the transformation sequence that we'll talk about later, that's the one that's talked about, and quite rightly. But I think you can tell that is fake. I think it's clear to see, really. But this makeup job on Griffin Dunne in this scene is outstanding.
Yeah,
I've never seen better. It doesn't look like makeup. It just looks so real.
Yeah, and the way this is lit as well. He's not like in a dark corner of the room.
I was just about to say, it's really heavily lit, so there's no hiding place.
No, see everything.
Outstanding piece of makeup work.
Oh, it's unbelievable, and it's close-ups as well.
Yeah,
it's a real headshot. Amazing.
So while we're here, we're going to talk about our first cast member. That's Griffin Dunne as the decaying undead and bored Jack Goodman. Matt, what do you think about Griffin Dunne as Jack in the film?
It's one of the best performances in the film for me. I think he's so memorable, even with fairly limited screen time. He would be memorable just as that concept alone, but it could be a case if you're like, oh yeah, American Werewolf, his friend comes back from the dead. But it's more than that. You remember Jack as a character. And I think you get enough details early on that he feels really real and three-dimensional. And so even though he's obviously the first victim in the film, he gets killed early on, you still feel sorry for him. Because you think, oh man, I was starting to really like this guy, and he's straight out there. And I think a lot of that is to do with what Griffin Dunne brings with it. And I think he's got real tangible chemistry with David Norton that do seem like these are really two best friends. You tell they just enjoy each other's company so much. And he's just so relatable, and he's really funny, and that makes his constant reappearances all the more funnier. Because like I say, his demeanour doesn't change at all. He's always just so still laid back and nice about it all. And he's just got that whole, I'm a ghost now, it's a bit shit, dealing with it. He's just got that deadpan, laid-back aura to him, which I really like. So, yeah, he's definitely one of the best things in the film for me. And there's a story which is great where when they were filming on the movies, there was only one trailer which had a toilet. So he went on to use it one time. And for some reason, a driver didn't realise it, and he hooked the trailer to a pickup and just drove off with him still stuck in the toilet. He's banging on the wall trying to get him to stop. Brilliant.
Like you were saying there, Matt, he's really upbeat considering he's dead and decaying.
Yeah.
Landis's direction to him in these scenes as a corpse was, no matter what you do, don't ever sound in anything else but a great mood.
Does it? Nails it.
Perfect.
Does. Brilliant. Yeah.
I think it's funny when they're at Alex's apartment and he takes a great interest in her possessions. He sniffs the flower. He looks in her closet.
Yeah.
And it looked like he's just completely green.
Yeah.
Even his clothes.
Yeah.
He says, I'm not having a nice time here. No shit. What do you think, Westy?
Yeah, I think he's great. Like Matt said, one of the best performances, but for me, he is the best performance in this film. Totally ties it all together, totally keeps you engaged. And he hasn't got a lot of screen time, but what he does have, he does perfectly. So when he pushes that mirror, which is classic, in the bathroom, you see him there, there's that jump scare, and he's just smiling, and he's just like, hey! He's fucking brilliant, isn't he? He's fucking brilliant. And he reminds me of Martin Short and Dudley Moore smashed together. He's got that really great supporting character, great supporting actor, and I think he's absolutely fantastic, and he's really, really likeable and really funny. When you see him standing on the street just waving outside that porno theatre, man, it's fucking magic. It's absolute magic. Brilliant performance. Best in the film for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. The casting process for the film was pretty easy, really. We don't have too many alternatives that we usually like to talk about. Mm-hmm. Griffin Dunn got the gig after a 10-minute conversation with Landis and a brief run-through of the script. The only thing that Landis asked him was, are you claustrophobic? And he never quite understood why he was asking it until the makeup job started. Yeah. And he was just thoroughly miserable during his time because it took hours to apply the makeup. And at the end, all it did was make him realise what he would likely look like if he was dead. Yeah. And it just psychologically really affected him. He was in a terrible state.
His mum as well. His mother was really bad because of it. That's terrifying.
When Landis was researching the film, he found out that in history, the most number of people who were executed for being werewolves were in France and in Wales. So Landis didn't speak French, and because of the tax breaks in the UK, he thought that would be a good place to go. So the crew of the film is largely English, and there's only 4 Americans that came over. Landis, Rick Baker, Norton, and Dunn. But it was really difficult to get Dunn a work permit because the Actors Union Equity got involved and argued that a second cast member should be English-based.
Right.
Landis threatened to relocate the film and even scouted locations for his newly titled An American Werewolf in Paris.
Oh, right, nice.
Okay.
Equity backtracked, and thankfully we were spared that terrible sounding film.
Are you going to see his new film, See You Next Wednesday? Just play that instead.
So, with Jack wandering around as the undead, David refuses to heed his warning despite his carnivorous urges.
The director.
The director of An American Werewolf in London is John Landis. Director who we haven't talked about on this show, but we have talked about him on our Trading Places Patreon podcast. So sign up to listen to that because we had a blast, didn't we, Matt?
Yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah, very good.
That was really good.
So, Matt, what do you think of Landis' work specifically on An American Werewolf in London?
His work here, it strikes me as something that you can tell he came up with this idea when he was 19 and he sat on this idea until he had the clout in the industry to make it, because everything feels very, very precise and extremely well thought through. And it's a strange one because sometimes I'll watch a film where I know that the directors wanted to make a particular film for years and they finally got around to it. And quite often I'll find it doesn't work because it's like they've made the film so many times in their own head, they've kind of lost the impetus to do it for real.
Yeah.
But I don't get the feeling with this. He brings a real vibrancy to it and a real love for the genre, and you can tell this is the one he really wanted to make. Mm-hmm. And I can't say for sure, but it does feel like there wasn't one moment on set where Landis didn't turn up 100% sure in what he wanted to do with every shot mapped out in his head. It feels like this wasn't a film where anything was improvised at all. I mean, I could be wrong, but it doesn't feel like it if so. And I think the most impressive thing is obviously the balancing of the comic and the horror aspects in here, because if he makes it too funny, that's going to dilute the horror. If he makes it too horrific, then the jokes are going to feel out of place. and they're not going to land. So the way that he goes between the two of those, the way he really leans into the horror, but then he'll pull back and he'll land these jokes with like a real well-timed touch. That's really impressive, and particularly how he just balances them throughout, and he goes from one to the other. And like for me, Landis, it's a weird one in general a little bit, him for me, because I know he obviously had quite a few hits throughout the 80s.
Yeah.
But this one to me, it's the only one where I feel I can like understand him as a person, and I feel his personality is in this film that I don't really get with his others. And you can tell what he loves about cinema here. You can tell that he really understands and loves the mythos of the werewolf. But he's got this ability to make it contemporary, and he does it in a way that had never been done before. No one had seen anything like this before. And to do that with some great individual sequences, with great jokes, some moments of real suspense and fear. And he just makes a really entertaining and complete package out of all of it. I think it's easily the best thing he's done as a director.
Yeah, I would certainly agree, although I do like a lot of his earlier stuff as well.
Yeah.
Glad you said earlier there, not Beverly Hills Cop 3.
No, not Cop. I mean, that's a travesty. I don't know how.
It is a
I
travesty.
can't fathom in my head. Beverly Hills Cop 3 was what, 12 years after this?
Yeah.
What happened? Well, I suppose we know what happened. But
Yeah.
just on this, I love the authenticity with how he's captured 80s England, the punks on the tube, the stiff upper-lippedness of characters like Dr. Hirsch, and the village mentality of East Proctor. He's clearly got an affinity for the country, for England.
Yeah.
I love that. I also like that David's circumstances are multi-layered as well. He's like a fish out of water in London, but that's not the only thing. He's a fish out of water in his own body as well. And I suppose you could also add into that the Jewish subtext that we talked about, burrowed into the subconscious of Jewish people, looking around their shoulder at every turn, feeling like outcasts in society, or certainly that's potentially what it was like during the war. And David feels that more and more as the wolf begins to take hold. So I think on the surface, Landis, of course, like you said, Matt, he does a fantastic job mixing that horror and comedy. Probably one of the best examples of it. But there's also, if you're looking for it, if you want to look for it, there is something deeper going on as well, which I really do like, because like you said, Matt, it's not that obvious. I think you said it or Westy said it. Both of you might have said it, but it's not that obvious. It's not like a slap in the face, but it's there. And I really like that about it. What about you, Westy?
Yeah, I kind of believe that this was after the Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's such a small scale film, and that it's one that he's just made because he really wanted to make it, not that he's got an audience to make it for. He did Schlock, didn't he, in 1973? I haven't seen that. Have you seen that, Luke?
I've seen bits of it. I did start to watch it like years and years ago, and I turned it off. It's awful. Don't bother.
Well, I put it in my notes. It was like, because he's not very accustomed to the genre, especially the horror genre. I mean, he matched action and comedy really well in the Blues Brothers, and he's done that. He's done that throughout. But you know, to make a horror film about a classic horror monster at that time, I thought you only had Schlock, which I've read the tagline for it, and I don't think I ever want to watch it.
What's the tagline?
An ape that falls in love with a blind girl and thinks he's a giant dog.
No, and now I want to know
brilliant
more.
or terrible. I can't decide. But from starting off with what Kentucky Fried Movie, then doing Animal House, then doing Blues Brothers, then doing this.
Yeah.
Like Blues Brothers to me seems like it's on such a massive scale, especially the chase sequence at the end. It's just huge,
big budget.
Really big production. This feels like he's just got sick of everybody. So, right, I'm just going to go to rural Wales and just shoot it like by himself with a couple of members of the crew and just show off what Rick Baker can do.
Yeah.
And it's just a really personal film. And I think a lot of his humour's in this. Matt said it's a lot of his personality, but I think a lot of this is John Landis humour. And I think he's really stuck to his guns. Even if someone said that's not funny, he'd probably do it twice just to piss them off. Yeah. And I think there's this real bravado and there's this real cockiness to this film. It's like, if you don't like it, I don't care. And I think that's why I really like it. It's really self-assured, especially in its direction.
And like you mentioned, Matt, Landis tried and failed to get the film made for quite a while. He was sitting on it for well over a decade. And he was told that it was either too scary to be funny or the other way around, too funny to be scary. Nobody wanted it. One rejection he got was from Bond producer Cubby Broccoli. Landis had made some uncredited rewrites on The Spy Who Loved Me, so he knew him. Broccoli's reply was very simple. Hell no, it's fucking weird.
That's just the Nazi sequence.
Yeah. Goes and makes Moonraker though, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Which, is really grounded, isn't it?
Yeah.
But after his string of hits that Westy mentioned there, Landis had much more pull in the industry and got the attention of John Peters and Peter Guberit's Polygram. But this wasn't the only werewolf film released in 1981. The Howlin', Wolfen, and Full Moon High were all released the same year. And Landis said, no one would make this fucking movie. There hasn't been a werewolf movie for years. When I finally got the opportunity to make it, there were like 6 werewolf movies in 1 year.
Yeah.
And upon release, after test audiences were terrified, Landis snipped out a few frames from some of the more grisly scenes. Westy, you mentioned the one about Jack, the toast falling out of his throat.
Yeah. Amazing.
Another scene was where the 3 homeless fellas get attacked. That was pretty much removed. The wolf comes down, grabs one, takes him out a shot. His body gets dropped onto a car, but he's missing like loads of body parts. Grisly.
Amazing. Brilliant.
That would have been amazing. Yeah. Landis has since said that he regrets making these cuts, and he also trimmed down the sex scene between David and Alex, and we will get to that later.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. But despite his work on the cutting room, Landis had a battle with the exec producers when he screened the film. They asked for some further cuts, and he said, give me a week, 10 days, I'm going to go away, I'll come back with a trimmed version. And he came back, showed them another cut of the film, and they said, yeah, much better. Like it. Release it. Print. And little did they know that Landis hadn't made any changes, and they'd just passed the cut that they balked at a week ago.
Amazing.
Idiots. We've talked about horror movies before, quite a few, on the podcast, but not specifically werewolves. So, Westy, where does this sit? Best werewolf film?
I don't think it's the best werewolf film. Not for me, anyway.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I like The Howlin'. I like In the Company of Wolves just because of the cover. I used to scare the shit out of us. I used to go to, like, Asda with my mum, and it was just there. This wolf coming out of her face. Massive. And I like Ginger Snaps as well.
Ginger Snaps is great.
Talk about that as much. I think that's really good. But for me, it's Neil Marshall's Dog Soldiers. It wins for me.
Very good.
This is, for me, that it feels like this is like Alien, and his is like Aliens. Right, it's still got the humour. It's totally inspired by this film. Yeah. It's just taken it and ramped it up, added more werewolves. It's in a similar setting. It's still just as funny. It's really fucking violent. It's really, really well acted. So for me, I'll put Dog Soldiers up there just because I would watch it more often than I'd watch this one.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, Dog Soldiers is a load of fun. I'm a big fan of that one. I've got a real soft spot for the only werewolf film that Hammer did, which is Curse the Werewolf. Right. I haven't seen that. That's really good. It's got Oliver Reed in there, one of his early roles.
Oh, fantastic. That's mentioned in...
Is that the one mentioned in the film?
In the film? Alex says, is that the one with Oliver Reed?
Yes, of course, yeah.
No, the old one. Yeah. Means the Wolfman. The
Brilliant.
Old one, yeah.
Yep, that's one. So, I'm saying that. Check that one out. And then, obviously, The Howlin' is a massive one as well. Yeah. I think The Howlin' is scarier than this. I find The Howlin' quite a disturbing watch for various reasons.
Particularly the start. It's really psychological.
Yeah. When she's in the kind of porn theatre thing with a murder man. Really disturbing. Yeah, it is. But I don't think some of the effects work in The Howlin' hasn't stood up as well as some of the effects work here. And actually, the other night I went back and I did watch like the original one, the Universal one, The Wolfman, which, it's iconic, but I think it's like when you go back watch the original Dracula, like it looks amazing, but it's quite creaky and very slow paced, and there's not too much in terms of story. So for me, I would go for this one. Actually, I do think American Werewolf in London is the best werewolf film. It's the one I would watch the most, but like say Dog Soldiers is a whole load of fun. If no
it is. That. It's great. Yeah. You mentioned the Wolfman there, Matt. It's absolutely outrageous. Lon Chaney's got that massive telescope, and then he goes straight over and starts saying that she's got earrings in her room. What a pervert! It's fucking crazy, isn't it? But I think I'm with you, Matt. This one for me, it's the one that I've watched the most by a mile. It obviously owes a lot to the mythology laid out in The Wolfman, which Landis knows, and that's why he references a couple of times. But I've never been that much of a massive fan of The Howlin'. Maybe only watched it a couple of times. But one that you didn't mention there that came out the same year was Wolfen. And that is just spectacular. It's a great film.
Really?
If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's great. It doesn't get the love that it deserves. And it's got a great lead performance from Albert Finney as well. He's amazing in it.
Oh, lovely. You haven't mentioned Wolf with Jack Nicholson, I see.
No.
for good reason.
And what was that Benicio del Toro one? Was that The Wolfman?
The Wolfman,
yeah. Dismissed.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. There's a new one recently called Werewolves Within. It only came out very recently. And that's really
good reviews.
Yeah,
it's good.
Really good.
I've read a few good reviews, so I'll have to check that one out as well.
But this one will always be my go-to. Landis was riding the wave of a creative peak. He had a string of successes before and a few after, but Werewolf is possibly his career best, certainly from a technical point of view.
cast.
In the cast, we're starting, of course, with David Norton, who plays latent werewolf David Kessler. Westy, what do you think about Norton as David?
Worst performance in the film for me, hands down. From an acting point of view, he's acting like he's acting.
Wow.
And it's very, very hammy and just you can just see straight through it. I think it's real. This film really works, and it's got its legacy because he was in nothing else, so he just exists as this character.
He does, yeah.
And that's it, and that works for me. That's great. That's fine. But like, he's not a good actor when he's there with Jack. Jack's just totally showing him up, and he just feels like every line of dialogue is just really heavy, like just weighted blow. And it's like you can tell he's a little bit creepy with Jenny Goodeye. He's just a little bit like you can tell he kind of fancies her a little bit and doesn't know what to do, and it just feels a little bit off for me. So his whole performance, I mean, the transformation scene is amazing. That's why I'm quite conflicted with it, 'cause it's not really about the acting or the performances or necessarily the characters or the backstory. It's a vehicle for Rick Baker
It's
to
a
say,
special effect.
this is how good this can be if you give us a chance to do it. But the Thing does that as well. But what the Thing does is it has, that story and that character, and everyone can act in the Thing, which I think is really important for a film.
that helps.
Does help.
Yeah, so I think it's just I'd see him, and some bits are all right, but when he's waiting in the queue and he's got that coat on and he's just supposed to be like having these little whimsical bits of dialogue, it doesn't really work. It works when he's really panicky and he's really over the top, because that's really over the top acting.
Yeah.
But what you don't need is really over the top acting when you're standing waiting for a bus or pulling faces on the tube. I just think it's just a bit cringy. So for me, he's probably the worst one in the film. He's a really bad human, but a great werewolf.
Wow, controversial views. And looking at Matt's face, I think he agrees with you, but I tend to disagree. It doesn't stick out. I don't think he's fantastic, but it doesn't stick out that he's a terrible performer. I think the film hinges on us relating to David as an individual. And if he was just a prick, we'd just dismiss his emotional turmoil. But I think it's heartbreaking when he finds out from Alan Ford's taxi driver about the 6 mutilations the previous night. Yeah. In his heart of hearts, he knows he's responsible, but I suppose he doesn't want to admit to it. And I think Norton plays that really well. Like you said, it's in those dramatic moments. I think he skirts that fine line between the comedy and tragedy of it throughout the film. I think not amazingly, but that the film needed to make it a classic. And when he's trying to get arrested and he realizes it's futile, it's really emotionally affecting. His reaction to it's a great piece of acting. He tells Alex that he loves her, and then he flees the scene.
You know them like really over the top runaways that they do when they're like, I'm not doing it with you anymore. I love you, bye. And the arms are flailing as they're running over the road. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. The pigeons are better in that scene. He always needs something else. He needs something else to reinforce his performance. When he runs through them pigeons, you're like, yeah, and then he shouts, I'm a werewolf, for fuck's sake. And it's but if without that setting, without the pigeons, if he was just in a room with Alex doing that performance, it would just be like, nah, he needs something else to kind of weigh it down.
Come on then, Matt. What do you think?
I am more with Westy on this, but I think one thing I would say is that...
Keep going, man, Matt.
The one thing I would say is that, like, any werewolf film, for to really work, one of the key things about it is it's got to have a tragic ending, because that always happens in the werewolf film. Once someone's bit, it's the end of the road for them. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I do think that the film does have an emotional impact at the end for me, and I think Norton does have to take some credit for that. I do feel his tragedy and his nature. And the scene that I do like a lot from him is that scene where he's ringing home and he's saying his goodbyes and he's speaking to his sister on the phone, but he can't get across what he really wants to say to her, and she's going on about Max, the other brother, and he's just telling her to behave and to get on. And, I do feel his anguish there, because he's trying to say his goodbyes, but his sister just can't comprehend what's going on at all. So I think he does well there, and that's very effective. But other than that, he does tend to annoy me a little bit. Like, he does get over Jack's death quite quickly for me.
Very well.
Like,
very
too
well.
quickly. Yeah, exactly. And then when you see him just mucking about on the tube, pulling faces, having a bit of a lark around. I hate that. That doesn't sit well at all for me. And I think as an actor, Norton doesn't have enough about him to compensate for that.
Okay.
And that partly is like because of where the script puts him as a character and makes him do that, but Norton can't compensate for that. But I will still stick up for him a little bit in that he does make the ending work for me, and I do feel his trauma and the emotional impact at the end. But overall, I would agree with Westy in that pretty much everyone else in the film is better than him.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't disagree with you on that. The casting of Norton was similar to that of Griffin Dunn, a quick chat and a run through of the script, but Landis knew him through his work on the Dr. Pepper ads from the 70s. They're on YouTube if you want to check them out. It's got a strapline that goes, "You're a pepper, I'm a pepper." And after their conversation, Landis said to Norton, "You're a werewolf, I'm a werewolf." Initially, casting went through around 300 people for Jack and David, and Norton and Dunn weren't the studio's first choice. Producers John Peters and Peter Guber were pushing for none other than Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi in the lead roles after John Landis had worked with them on Blues Brothers.
That would have been so good.
Landis pushed back because he wanted unknowns for the film, and I wouldn't change the casting choices, but there's definitely a part of me that wants to see Belushi as a walking meatloaf doing backflips.
I want to see Aykroyd in that makeup talking really fast about the undead. That would be incredible.
Imagine how fast that flap would be going.
Yeah, it would be amazing. Fucking great.
Food fight.
Yeah.
Landis specifically shot in February and March because he wanted bad weather, but the cold weather was tricky for Norton, particularly in the dream sequences where he's romping through the woods fully nude. He said, "It's cold and you've got no shoes on, and that's the hardest part, running in the wooded areas on slick paths, trying not to go ooh, ow, and the crew's saying, 'Come on, it's warm, this is a dream, you're leaping through the air like a deer.'"
You can see that shot where he's taking that literally, and he literally leaps like a deer over the
It's
tree.
graceful.
See, that's his act. No, it's just someone tells him to do it, and he's just like, right, I'll do that exact thing.
I really love those tracking shots, and the POV shots are fantastic of the dream
they're
sequences
great.
through the woods. That
Amazing.
zombie bed sequence, that's genuinely terrifying.
Yeah, even now, it's horrible.
It is. You know it's
Absolutely
coming.
horrible.
There's like a really eerie presence in the sound design. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just makes the whole thing really unsettling.
Yeah.
He said that was the most difficult scene to shoot because he had to wear glass contact lenses for the zombie
Awful.
effect.
It's just something about that bed in the middle of the wood, and it's really heavily lit, and it's just like idyllic. It's horrible.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's awful. Another issue Norton had without his clothes were the scenes in London Zoo when David awakes from his first night of killing. He's in that cage with real wolves, and that's a nice touch. Obviously, David is a werewolf taking refuge with his own kind.
Right.
But added to Norton's discomfort was the wolf trainers were all women, and he's all there letting it all hang out. But Landis had to avoid any full frontal nudity because, unlike his character, Norton was not circumcised. And that's the only reason, not like decency or anything like that. Just didn't want any continuity errors.
Rick Baker could have sorted that out, surely.
Just get some patty.
Yeah, give it here.
Give it here.
3 hours in makeup.
Fantastic. The trainers told Norton that the wolves weren't dangerous, and that's because they'd just been fed, but was a good job they didn't throw the patty in there.
What a great shot.
But he was recommended not to make any sudden movements or loud noises, and he was thinking, okay, like, let's just get this done, one take, boom, 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 we'll move on. And production overran beyond the 9 a.m. cutoff time, and Norton looked up at one point and noticed that there were loads of extras around, and he was told by the trainers, no, they're not extras, the zoo's open for business.
You can tell when he's climbing out there, he's shitting himself, like as you would be.
Yeah. I think that Kate asked some very pertinent questions as well. Why would a balloon thief want to give me £2? It's a fair cop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because of the nudity in the film, Norton was dropped as the face of Dr. Pepper. Like, the mad killings weren't a problem.
Yeah.
You really scared me, you shithead.
Next up on the cast list is Jenny Agutter, who plays the sympathetic nurse Alex Price. Matt, what do you think of Agutter as Alex?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. God bless the NHS.
They do a great job.
They do. What a fantastic job. Angels, every single one of them. I mean, she's lovely, isn't she?
Really creepy, this, mate. Really creepy as fuck. Turning into David Norton.
Well, I know Norton had known Agatha a while, or he'd known her previously before this, and he had a big crush on her back then.
Yeah.
So, and that totally comes across in the film. You do buy that. He doesn't have to do much acting in that sense.
Yeah.
But Agatha, I think, along with Griffin Dunne, I think she's easily the best performer in the film for me.
Agreed.
And, she absolutely makes up for the idea that a nurse would actually take a patient home with her like this. I'm pretty sure that's like frowned upon in her job.
Yeah.
That's
morally, she's on dodgy ground.
Oh, totally, yeah. But I think like Agatha's performance totally compensates for that, and she brings like a real warmth, a real compassion to the film, like for everyone. And I think on the page, I think that character is a bit cliched and a bit unbelievable. The hot nurse with a cut glass accent. But I think Agatha just breaks through all that, and she makes Alex a really human part of the film. And I think what she does is she ends up representing us, because at the start we're with David, we feel for him in his predicament and his confusion. But once she realises the truth of what's going on and what's happening to David and how it's going to end, and she realises she can't do anything to help him or to stop it, I think that becomes us, because we become onlookers as well.
Yeah.
And we just have to like step back and just say, the end's coming and we can't do anything to help David. And I think Agatha does a really good job of bringing all that up on screen. And the end of the film, like I say, it's got to be a tragic end. And I think she contributes so much to that end.
Totally
I think
agree.
she does put a lot of anguish on screen. So, I mean, I'd go as far as saying this. I think she covers up a lot of shortcuts that the film makes in the writing, which we'll get to in a bit. But ultimately, I think she does bring a lot to this film, and so much of that ending in particular works because of her.
Yeah, I agree. And I totally agree with you, Matt. She's an absolute delight, Jenny Agutter.
She is.
She is wonderful with her upper middle class accent and her slow vowels. Very nice.
Oh, God.
Slow vowels.
Tips for anyone going on a date this evening? Use your slow vowels. Can I have a glass of water, please?
Mick Jagger. I'm not going out with Mick Jagger.
Brown sugar.
I mean, I wouldn't mind being bedridden and being force-fed by Nurse Price, certainly. Despite that meat looking tough as old boots, I wouldn't mind it. But, I mean, for a working girl, she's got like a swish pad, hasn't she?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I do like it when she threatens, like the scenes in the hospital when she's talking to the orderly, when she threatens the kid in the hospital who just says no all the time.
Yeah.
She says, Benjamin, have you ever been severely beaten around the face and legs?
No.
But she plays it completely straight in the final scene, going back to what you were saying, Matt. But when she's looking at the werewolf, telling it that she loves him, I mean, that in the wrong hands, that could have been awful. But I'm bought into her pain. I think that comes from her desperation to get to him and the fight that she puts up to get through the crowd of police. And I think she plays it straight throughout. And I don't think it would have worked if she played it with a nod and a wink throughout. I think her performance, like Griffin Dunne, very good. But David's increasingly bizarre behaviour does make me wonder why she would continue to associate with him.
Yeah.
He turns up to her flat in an old lady's coat, claiming that he woke up in the zoo. She's known him for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Get rid of him.
Get rid of him.
What about you, Westy?
Yeah, exactly the same. I think she's great. She brings a real element of class.
Wonderful.
It's a very theatrical performance. I'm trying not to be as pervy as you do. Like, I mean, she's just a delight. She's just wonderful, isn't she?
She is a delight.
I mean, good grief.
She's
Right.
an angel.
I mean, she is. And like you said, look, I mean, as a character, she's very, very plainly written, isn't she? She's got no real sense of self, any sense of threat at all. And it's like when he's being playful and he's in a very good mood, he's very effervescent and we've got to go to the hospital because the doctor wants to talk to you. Oh, that's fine. We'll get a taxi. He's getting out there. Where did you get that coat? That's what she says to him. She sees him in an old lady's coat and she says, oh, where did you get that coat? Fucking hell. What?
Get rid of him.
Get rid of him. But it baffles me that she's just so understanding of everything. But I've got a theory of how this film could be completely improved in my eyes, which I'll wait for the end. I'll wait for the end.
Wow.
Okay.
Not coming yet. It's not coming yet.
Drum roll.
But yeah, it's a great performance, but I wish she'd had a little bit more emotional depth and a little bit more to play with. I think it would have been, you see it at the end and you see she's capable of it, but I wish she just had a little bit more and their story or their relationship was a little bit more complicated. It's a bit of a split for me, but yeah, she's fantastic in the film.
Yeah, Very good. Her unlikely relationship with David culminates in a shower sex scene, all scored by Van Morrison's Moon Dance. And this brings us to our second question from one of our patrons. This time it's from Anna Randall. Hello, Anna.
Hello, Anna. No surprises here.
She's... Anna's question is this. Is this the least sexy sex scene in a film ever? And does it need to be so long? She says they look freezing in that shower, but she does love Van der Man, and this is in her top 5 favourite films, definitely her favourite horror film. She's sending big thanks for covering this.
Nice.
Yeah?
Lovely. No
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Westy, do you want to...
Just give it some elegance. Yeah.
Set the tone before we puncture it.
Class it up.
This was one of the very first ones I saw. Like I say, I saw it young, saw it all the way through, and I thought, well, this is how you do it, isn't it? You just you go in the shower with someone, bite them on the shoulder a bit, roll around a little bit, and that's it, job done.
How's your father?
It's absolutely amazing. I've got 2 kids. Like after a date, we'll come back. Do you want to come upstairs? He comes upstairs, and I just turn the shower on. What the fuck are you doing? Well, that's how it starts, isn't it? It's on American Werewolf in London.
That's how it goes, isn't it?
That's how it begins, isn't it? That's where this is born. But it's cringy as fuck. It's really hard to watch. It's really fucking like he's spent more time directing a porno and then can't direct a normal sex scene.
I know.
Like, it's outrageous. So yeah, I think she's right. It's probably one of the worst. And if I'm watching it with anybody else, it's that moment where I kind of go, "Oh, this is a bit fucking crap."
I'm going to pop the kettle on.
Yeah, I'll just stick the shower on. So I agree with Anna to answer the question. And fucking hell, he cut it as well. God knows what he cut out. What they do, have a bath first, then a shower, cup of tea.
Rub down?
Little rub down there.
What about you, Matt? Bring the tone right down.
Oh, God, yeah, here we go. Well, it's funny that Anna asks this because she knows full well as a patron that she voted, maybe not her personally, but collectively a few months ago voted to make me watch Basic Instinct for the Take 30 episode.
Unforgivable.
It is unforgivable because after sitting and having to watch Michael Douglas rut his way through that.
God, just...
Rut like a stuck pig. That, for me, I would still safely say is a much worse sex scene than this. But in general, I think she's absolutely on the money. It is extremely cringeworthy.
Yeah.
Ridiculously overlong. And it's definitely been written by a 19-year-old American in the fantasy about a hot British nurse that he gets to hook up with. That's where this comes from.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it's so long. I don't like it when you, like you said, Westy, while Alex is nibbling on David's shoulders. What the fuck? that is not sexy. Well, maybe if it's Agatha doing it, it actually is.
Yeah, in a cold shower.
But that is not sexy. And I don't know what the relevance this has to the plot. That means that this scene has to be 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
Crazy. I also dislike the way that Moon Dance is edited. The song, it jumps around, it's really choppy. I think Landis has butchered the song. It sounds terrible, and it is a favourite of mine. But yes, Anna, I think this scene is definitely down there as one of the worst sex scenes ever. But it doesn't come anywhere near close to Leah Thompson having sex with Howard the Duck.
I quite like that.
That is a giant Hollywood misstep. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's not even a misstep. I don't even think they took a step. It's disgusting.
Plunge. Anna mentioned how cold they look, and Norton said at the time that there weren't a lot of showers in London, so one had to be built for this scene, and they struggled to regulate the water temperature. They were really cold. So much so that Griffin Dunn was on set as well, and he suggested it was clearly obvious that Norton was cold.
Rick Baker can sort that out, man.
And Agatha said that the film crew doubled in size for this scene. She said all
That's
of a sudden
disgusting.
There were men I'd never seen before around pretending to do things. Outrageous behaviour.
That's absolutely...
Objectifying a wonderful woman like that. Disgusting.
Sorry, it is disgusting, Matt, to be fair. That's fucking...
Oh,
that is so bad.
Yeah.
It's just... Nah, I don't like that at all. I think it's fucking pointless. I think as soon as they found out there was no showers, perfect, cut it.
Then
you've got something that's perfectly passable.
Yeah.
Just rolling around in the dark, that'll do for me.
Nice little touch as well. Some of the scenes filmed around Alex's flat were shot on Lupus Street in Pimlico. Lupus is Latin for wolf.
Nice.
Ah, yes.
Lovely. As with the cast of most horror films, An American Werewolf in London remains a high watermark in the careers of David Norden and Jenny Agutter. However, Agutter has remained a consistent acting presence in TV and film, certainly in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
The middle.
We're into the second act of the film. Up to this point, Alex moves David into a flat and he gets acquainted with English life. They confirm their romantic feelings before Jack pays David another visit with a warning. Dr. Hirsch, intrigued by David's werewolf claims, visits the village of East Proctor, where his suspicions are heightened. We're looking at the scene where the wolf finally takes hold of David and we see his painful transformation. Matt, do you want to take it away?
The thing that makes it so effective for me is that it's not set in the middle of the night out in a back street or an empty park somewhere.
Yeah.
It's in a flat. It's fully lit. There's nowhere to hide. And I love how Landis, he just smashes us right into this scene with like little build-up or preparation. You just get that brief shot of Alex in the hospital and the full moon shining through the window over his shoulder. There's no like slow build-up of David like feeling unwell or thinking something's up. He's just straight into this, like, looks like this massive like migraine headache that he's got.
Yeah.
And he's just absolute agony and he's drenched in sweat, and I think that's a really great touch. And I think, to be fair to him, we've not been like showering him with praise so far, but I do think this is one of Norton's better moments in the film, just convincing you he's in so much pain here.
Totally
I think he does
agree.
actually, he does do a really good job here. But it's so confidently shot by Landis because he knows he's got this amazing work by Rick Baker that he's got to show off. Which is why he doesn't feel the need to hide it. And there's that moment in it where they break the fourth wall when David just like reaches out at the camera and looks in.
Yeah, that's a bit
terrifying, that bit.
It is, and that could have just been the first thing you cut. That could have worked so badly, but it doesn't. It's so good. I love the fact that it's in there.
He's pleading with the audience as well,
it
isn't
is.
he?
That howl that he gives out.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Absolutely love that bit. It's a bit like the Attack on the Moves for me because it's so much more effective that you don't have any original soundtrack over the top of this. You got Blue Moon in the background, but no like stereotypical horror music accompanying this, and I think that makes it all the more effective. So it's one of the most iconic horror scenes for a good reason. And another little bit I love, just for the sheer randomness of it, is when Landis cuts away for a reaction shot to that little Mickey Mouse toy. That's just like looking, it's so random, but it just fits so well.
Yeah,
the whole scene, it's iconic for a reason.
Yeah, I agree.
This is the scene, isn't it? It just turns the whole thing up to 11, and it just
It really does.
You know, it reinforces the film and everything you've been watching up to this point. And even now, when I'm watching it, I still can't believe what I'm seeing. And it's just the sound design and the bones stretching, and then when his face stretches. All of this is in camera. All of this is happening in front of everybody's faces.
Exactly.
So how good of an actor do you need to be? Not very much. So he does do really well here. But I think it's just, honestly, it's just Rick Baker's time here. And he just, top of his game. It's still now really, really difficult to watch. And like Matt said, it's the setup. You've got Credence, Bad Moon Rising.
Amazing.
And he's just walking around the flat and he's just bored and I'm not hungry and don't know what's going to happen. Then he just opens the door. He says, and all of a sudden, you're overhead. You're going to see everything. And then when it finishes, you just think, oh, God, please don't let me see that ever again. It's so affecting. It's fucking brilliant.
It is. Yeah, I like that. You mentioned it. I like that David's shuffling around the flat and he's waiting for something that he can't believe is possible. But he kind of knows in his heart of hearts, but he doesn't because it's irrational. Yeah. And you've got Bad Moon Rising playing, and he's trying to keep himself occupied looking in the fridge. And when it comes to it, like, my God, I can feel like every contorted muscle, every bone crack, every cracked fingernail. I can feel the hair coming through the follicles, and he looks in absolute agony. And like Jack in the opening, he sells this pain very, very well.
Yeah.
And that final moment when that wolf's snout expands is both shocking and awe-inspiring in equal measure. I cannot believe it was done in bright light.
Yeah.
And all this combined, great editing, close-ups, and the blocking in the scene just makes it just totally iconic.
Yeah.
For the special effects, Landis turned to his old pal, effects guru Rick Baker. They had worked together on Landis' first movie, Schlock, that Westy mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Which is where Landis showed Baker the script for this film, and he was on board straight away. But because it was taking so long to get off the ground, he committed to doing effects work for another werewolf movie, The Howling.
Yeah.
And Landis was pretty furious about this, that he jumped ship and he used some of his American Werewolf ideas for that film. So, conflicted, Baker got out of the Howling gig by drafting in his protege, Rob Bottin.
Yeah.
And Baker is just credited as a consultant on that film. The difference between the two, The Howling, is it's the transformation, it's dark. It's nowhere near as accomplished as this film.
No.
Landis had no idea how he was going to do the work required to get it right for this film. He said it was the worst possible thing for an effects artist. It specifies that it happens in bright light, and I wanted to show it all.
Yeah.
And he does.
Yeah.
Well, you would.
Yeah. So, Westy, what do you think of Rick Baker's effects work in the film?
It makes a film, doesn't it?
It does.
Makes it.
Yeah.
I think
it makes it what it is.
I think, to be honest, it would be very, very poor film without that level of work. I think it's good. The script's grip. The only reason that the dialogue works for Jack, especially, is because of the makeup.
Yeah.
And the only reason that you keep watching is because of that transformation. It's just at the right point of the film. Landis knows what he's doing. It's like he's just got these like gold bars that he's got 3 of them, and you can place them like start, middle, end. We're going to do a Crash and Piccadilly Circus. That's great. We're going to get lost on the moors. We're going to get attacked by a werewolf, and we're going to have this bit in the middle when he transforms.
Yeah.
And it just feels like they're anchored on them 3 points.
Big tent poles.
And this one, and this one just really does not disappoint. I can't imagine this being any better.
No, I can't.
There's not a shot I think, oh, that's a bit half-assed, or oh, that doesn't really work. Everything works, and it's almost like he knows exactly what angle it's going to be shot at. I think the way that it cuts between the wider angles and then the real close-ups, I think Rick Baker's he's got a lot of work to do, and he does it really, really well. Like, everything's flawless. You could just imagine he'd spent most of his time on that face extending. So that's basically what you're going to get is like the money shot, but all the shots in this sequence, all because of Rick Baker's work, are all money shots. Like, it's not a bad shot. No. You can put the camera anywhere in that room and it's going to look fucking outrageously good.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's difficult to say like anything new about it, isn't it? Because it transcended the genre and it's so different at everything else that had been seen before. And I think along with what Rob Bottin did in The Thing, it's still the benchmark for
I think those
effects.
two back to back are still shining pillars of effects work in the 80s.
Yeah, totally. It's difficult to see how they could be improved on. So I think what I do find interesting, though, is when you compare to what had been done before. And they've obviously made the decision that when David turns, he is going to turn into an actual wolf. Because the difference is in the past, it was always that hybrid between a man and a wolf. So that meant it was just a case of putting makeup on the hands and on the face. Yeah. And obviously at the time, that was still really like impressive and it looks iconic. But this is just something else entirely. Because they've all thought it through anatomically. So it's like, well, how would a human hand turn into a claw? What would happen to the bones? How would the legs change shape? Yeah. You know, how does a human face... Exactly. How would a human face turn into a snout? And they've not backed away from any of it. They've not gone, oh, you know what, that would be too hard, so we'll skip that. It's like, no, we'll show everything. So it's just incredible to see this body literally twisted out of all recognition. It's so good, I don't even wonder that much how it manages to get out of a flat in the first place without destroying the door or something.
Well, he opens the door because he says he's hot, so he does open the door first before he changes, so it's already open for him to get out. So I did look at that.
Do you think it would fit, though?
Yeah.
He would just saunter out.
Just like sideways on.
Just potter out. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Baker said that the reason he was able to make the effects better than it had gone before it is that he was given time and money to be able to do it. He worked for around 6 months before filming started, and the film, like we said, was shot sequentially to give him more time to get it right for this transformation sequence.
Yeah.
And this period of time was arduous for Dunn and Norton. Norton particularly was in the studio from 5 a.m. and sat for 10 hours straight while Baker and his team did their magic. And he said it was like a long flight that never gets there.
Oh.
Baker conceived of the werewolf as being on 2 legs, kind of what you were saying, Matt. But Landis had this clear vision and he said, I want it to be a 4-legged hound from hell. And he thought that the transformation should show how painful the transition was. Not like the Wolfman where Lon Chaney just sits calmly in a chair and like the lapse dissolve shot show him just gaining hair on his legs. And he's fine. Some of the showpieces of the transformation were done really simply. The expanded hand was rubber with 4 syringes in it, and when they were plunged, the hand expanded.
Wow.
Same thing with the feet. The hair growth was just a piece of fake flesh with clumps of hair just pulled through it, and the footage was then played backwards for the film.
Wow, yeah.
The popping of the spine is just air being blown through tubes. And for the shots where David is on his back, Norton was in a hole in the floor with only his head peering out, and the rest is just puppetry. I mean, it does look fantastic.
Oh, it looks flawless.
Yeah. Flawless, but very good.
Genius, man.
Didn't even think about that.
The expanding head was the most complex. It's a plasticized animatronic rubber head that had different moving parts that could be manipulated separately. So this allows for the head to expand in different areas at different times. And there were loads of different heads that were used in various states of expansion as well, as one cut happens and the next one comes in.
Yeah.
The transformation itself took 6 days to complete, applying and removal of makeup taking a large percentage of the time. Baker said in those 6 days, a 60-hour period, they shot only 30 minutes of footage.
Wow.
And he was questioning the amount of time that he put in 6 months' work for this scene, which is over really quickly. And he didn't think it was worth it until he saw the finished article. But Landis now has reservations about the length of the scene. He said he was so taken by Baker's work that he wanted to show as much as possible, and now he thinks it's too long.
Nah.
No, I disagree. I think it's
I do.
Perfectly judged. You want to see that stuff?
Yeah, I agree. For his groundbreaking work on the film, Rick Baker won the very first Academy Award for makeup. There had been a couple of honorary ones given in the past, but this was the first time it was a legit category. And he would go on to be nominated a further 10 times, picking up 6 more awards. Big stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was all because of the uproar with the Elephant Man and all the makeup on that in 1980, wasn't it? They
That's
brought
right.
that category in, and then Rick Baker was the first to win it, and
Yes.
deservedly so. It's fucking
Absolutely.
massive.
Yeah, it's massive. Our third and final Patreon question comes from Ryan Chippo. Hello, Ryan.
Hello,
Ryan.
Ryan, mate.
He says, if you were to make a monster movie, what would your dream picks be for director and special effects guru combination? So, for example,
Nice.
he gives Alfred Hitchcock and Ray Harryhausen. Nice little combination, that.
Yeah.
Matt?
I think you'd have to pick a director who really just knows his like cinematic history and understands the like history, I guess, of practical effects. So, you know, Scorsese and Tarantino jump to mind first of all, and I think I'd go with Tarantino for the director,
Okay.
just because you know he'll have seen so many obscure horrors or science fictions
course.
with some, you know, pretty good makeup effects that he would have remembered and he could do something with. And then I guess Harryhausen is the obvious one, but I've gone a bit further back. I've picked Jack Pierce, who was working at Universal, and he came up with Frankenstein's monster, that look, and the iconic look for Dracula and the Wolfman.
Lovely.
And, you know, his work has still lasted. It's still really recognisable today. So I think if you put him with Tarantino, I think you would end up with something really interesting.
Wow. A clash of styles and cultures there. I love it.
Yeah.
And eras. What about you, Westy?
See, I'm the same with you, Matt, for director. But I think it would be just far more interesting, far more fun if we had Tarantino and Rob Bottin together. Even if
Oh,
they're
nice.
just having a conversation.
Yeah.
Fucking amazing. That's entertaining enough. So I would love to see him do something like The Thing. I would love to see Tarantino go into that horror genre. But again, he really appreciates the history, like Matt was saying. So that's why I've chosen him, very similar. But I'd love the fun of Rob Bottin in there. I think they would come up with fucking ridiculous stuff. It'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, I've always been a fan of Dick Smith's effects work. He worked on The Exorcist, but that was one of his few horror films that he worked on. His other credits were things like The Godfather, Taxi Driver, Marathon Man. So I'd like to see him go back into the horror genre in the 70s or 80s, working with Dario Argento. That's my pick.
Oh,
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Very cultured young man. Yes, Argento for me.
I'll go with what Matt said.
And I'll just copy off you and put Bottin in there because I've just heard his name 20 minutes ago.
There are always big, garish, memorable death scenes in giallo horror films, and I think Smith would be in his element, spraying blood everywhere and lopping heads off.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Great.
Well, tell him I'm out. Tell him I've passed away, an old war wound.
Just tell him I'm dead.
Having transformed into the wolf, David goes on a kill rampage and takes out a young couple on Hampstead Heath before tearing up 3 tramps in the shadow of Tower Bridge. We're looking at the scene where the wolf moves north to Tottenham Court Road tube station, where he stalks an unsuspecting commuter. Westy,
Yeah,
what do you think of this scene?
I think it's great. I really love it. I love the way that the tube station's been shot. I think you need an American director to come in and see that from a fresh point of view. Like, it's cool for a chase sequence. Like, we would never have thought that because it all just seems very familiar. But he does make it look cool. And I think all the posters that are around there, have you noticed how many film posters are there?
Yeah.
There's absolutely loads from classics like Close Encounters, Empire Strikes Back, Airplane, Prom Night, Battle Beyond the Stars, Gloria, Raging Bull. Fucking brilliant, just putting all them in there.
Yeah, excellent.
And it's just, as he's running, I just love this as a sequence for the Steadicam, and I don't think it's talked about as much as Rocky or The
Totally
Shining
agree.
or, even Bound for Glory. The use of the Steadicam here is brilliant, and I love that how you see it from the creature's point of view.
Yeah, low angle.
Just scattering at his feet.
Lovely.
I think the performance here is fantastic. I know this was over 60 takes, so you'd have been fucking knackered.
Holy
But
shit.
just when he finally jumps on that escalator, like my mum used to warn me when we used to go out to the shopping centre and you had the escalator and you were just warned, stand there, don't move. If you get your feet caught in it, you're going to die.
Yeah.
It's like, and they're just so intent on, like, you've just got to respect the escalator. And every time he dives on it, I'm like, well, you just respect it. You're going to get caught. You're going to get your finger caught. And I totally forget the fact that he's getting followed by a fucking werewolf. I'm more worried about him getting his tie caught in an escalator or something. But that shot's amazing when you just see it at the bottom of the escalator when he's
fantastic.
So fucking good. And the sound design's great on that, sound design through the whole thing. As the use of Steadicam, I would put that up here with the likes of Rocky, the likes of The Shining. I think it's really, really well done. Perfect use of the system. I think it's great.
Yeah, I also like the shot when he's running for his life and it's in front of him. He leaps over the metal fence.
Leaves his umbrella.
Yes. Yeah. Great. But that shot at the top of the escalator with the wolf just coming into view at the bottom. Masterful stuff, that.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
What do you think, Matt?
Much like you two guys, I think it's fantastic. I think anyone who's a fan of this film, it is getting like a train late at night and there might be the only person on the platform. This has to come to mind every time, doesn't it?
Definitely.
But I love this guy. I love how pompous he is. I shall report this.
Yeah. I can assure you.
And I think it's a sequence that it could have sunk the film in some respects, because I think Landis knows that, this wolf puppet is good for the time, but I think it's more effective the less you see of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So he's got to compensate for that, and he does that really well. Like Westy says, with the Steadicam, with those POV shots, as it's chasing him like through the corridors and then up to the escalator. Because if he doesn't pull that off, then the film's not going to work, because this is one of the scariest sequences in the film. So it's got to have that effect.
Really
and I think
memorable.
it does. It is. It's really memorable. It's really threatening. The only issue I've got, there's a little bit of this film that takes me out a little bit. I don't know if you have noticed it, but if you look at the clock, it says it's 1 PM.
Right.
So there's no way it would be that empty at that time of day.
That spoils it for you.
Yeah, just every time I see it, I'm like, it's 1 PM.
Oh, really?
It wouldn't be that
I never
empty.
noticed.
I never noticed. Way to fucking ruin it.
Sorry. No, you'll never unsee it either.
Yeah. It reminds me of a film from 1972 called Deathline of Raw Meat with Donald Pleasance in it. Have you seen that?
Oh,
Yeah,
It's got a very similar kind of vibe. Like, it's really creepy, and it's got that kind of... It
great
reminds
film,
us of that. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
Fucking horrible.
Yeah. I mean, it's your worst nightmare, isn't it? These places, they're unnerving anyway, particularly at night or 1 PM, whatever, Matt. But when you're alone and there's nobody else around, I think this scene strikes a chord with people just because it's totally relatable. A lot of people have had these fears living in London and beyond. And on that, one of our patrons, Matt Lum, had this to say about the scene. He feels very passionate about it. He said, "What's more terrifying about London's Northern Line? One, being hunted alone at night by a werewolf, then being gruesomely mauled to death, or using the Northern Line at 8 PM, Monday to Friday." He says, "Give me the fucking werewolf every day." But you mentioned Deathline there, Westy, and that was Landis' inspiration for the film.
Was it?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Lovely.
And this guy, Gerald Brinsley, is played by Michael Carter. For Star Wars fans, he is Bib Fortuna in Return of the Jedi.
And there you go. Obviously, you don't know who that is, Luke.
He's the guy. He's the guy with the snake coming out of his neck and round his.
It's not a snake, but we'll close enough.
Looks like it. Finally, David has realised his calling at the behest of a full moon, leaving a trail of bloody destruction in his wake.
The crew.
First on our crew list is writer John Landis.
That guy.
That guy.
Yeah, that guy.
What do you think about him, Westy?
I think he's writing here, like we've said before, when we're talking about him, his direction. It's very personal. It's obviously been stored up from different experiences. It feels like there's a few different ideas here that could have been different films, especially the dream sequences and then flashbacks. I think it works really well. I think some of the dialogue is a bit clangy. It is a bit stereotypical. It is a bit obvious. But the premise of the film, I mean, it couldn't be any simpler, really, could it? It's really good in its simplicity. He almost embraces that simplicity, and he can add, these extra layers onto it, which is very much his personality and where he's coming from. So I think, as a writer, there's the really good ideas, and they are really well directed and really well shot. But when it comes down to a script, I don't think it's particularly well written as a fully formed script.
Right.
That's all I've got to say about it.
All right. Okay. Well, what about you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm kind of on a similar track, I think, because it is very similar to the direction in that The writing is very well honed at parts. You know, those jokes are really sharp. The horror sequences are really well thought through. And all these individual sequences, if you take them individually, they're all really great standalone scenes. But I think it gets to the point where everything starts to feel a little bit too neat and tidy. The more I come back to this film, the more that this strikes me, is that I don't think the writing is as impressive as I thought it once was. And it's kind of like what I mentioned with Agatha. I think it takes some shortcuts which do stand out to me. And I think there's some like big plot holes in here as well. Like David is attacked and injured in Yorkshire, but he's taken to London to recuperate.
Yeah, don't know why.
Yeah, no idea why that happens. I mean, that makes no sense.
Was that not something to do with they wouldn't have the necessities in a small town, in a rural small town hospital or whatever? And plus the fact you don't think you would need to be next to the American embassy with him being an American citizen.
Wouldn't like his safety be more paramount than being next to the... But also, I mean, like Manchester is an hour away.
Yeah.
For any American listeners or anyone outside the UK, to get from Yorkshire to London, you have to travel through about 5 different counties. So, you know, it's not like it's like right next door.
And it's like 3 hours or something like that, 3-4 hours in the car.
Yeah, exactly, at least. And, you know, to compare to America, I mean, and I know America's obviously vastly bigger than the UK, but it's like if you got injured in Texas and they took you to Washington to go to the hospital there, it's just, you know, traveling through the same amount of states. So that doesn't really work. And we've kind of touched on it a little bit already, but Alex and David's relationship, her decision to take him in quite randomly. This guy who's been through this horrific ordeal is suffering God knows what kind of trauma. And they fall in love. I mean, that happens because the film needs that to happen rather than it feeling particularly logical or believable.
I don't understand really Alex's feelings, why they've grown for David, because he's bizarre. That's somebody who you would just like, we'll discharge you from a hospital and I'll never see you again.
And he clears it off in the script by she just says that he's very attractive all the way through the film. You're very attractive.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It doesn't work at all. So ultimately, those bits for me, they just don't work. And I think it is quite thin. It's a piece of writing. It does have these great individual moments in there, but everything that links those moments together, there needs to be more flesh on the bone. They need to work better. They need to be stronger. Like, I know you'll hate this, Luke, but to be honest for me, I think the film could be about 20 minutes longer to work on those bits, to make those bits more logical. Sorry. No, you hate that idea. So, ultimately, I think it's a very good script in part, but I don't think it comes close to being great.
I think I've got similar issues. I think the concept is very good. I think the big set pieces mask over the deficiencies in the writing. I've got the same issues with you guys about Alex's motivations in this relationship. But to be quite honest, because I hold that close to my heart, the film, I'm more than willing to give that a bit of a pass. Maybe because I've just seen it and familiarity has meant that I don't question it anymore.
Well, yeah.
We've already said the way that he balances out the comedy and the horror is really impressive. I think that's the most impressive thing from the script. I mentioned it on the Midnight Run episode that a mob comedy is really hard to pull off, and I think a horror comedy is harder still.
Yeah.
Because you've got two extreme emotions that you're dealing with, fear and joy, which never, ever sit well together for obvious reasons. The horrors are extreme in the film, but I think what Landis does well is that he doesn't fall into the trap of making the comedy extreme. There's no like apparent sight gags or visual comedy. Nobody's falling over a banana skin, or there's no gross out comedy or anything like that. The comedy's in the writing, which I think is a lot harder to do, but he pulls it off really well. And I think he's written one of the finest examples in the genre for horror and comedy. And I think the only film that comes close to that since in that terms of that balance is Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
So, writing, I mean, it could have been better, but I'm easy to skirt.
You don't care.
I don't care.
You don't care.
Landis got the idea of the film and wrote the screenplay way back. We've alluded to it in 1969 when he was working as a production assistant on Kelly's Heroes in Yugoslavia. He was 19 at the time. That's impressive that he was that young and he's wrote a script like this. And that's possibly a reason why there are holes in it.
Yeah, I think so.
He saw a man being buried feet first in Yugoslavia, wrapped in cloth rosaries and garlic. And he found out that this strange ritual was for a man who'd committed this heinous crime like rape or murder. But he was buried at a crossroad, and the burial method was to ensure that he didn't come back on an undead killing spree.
Because that happens all the time.
Yeah. Landis said, I was very taken by this idea. How would I react if that fella did claw his way to the surface and pull himself out of the grave like Peter Cushing? What would you do in that situation? Because if you're a rational, educated person, you know it's bullshit. It doesn't exist. So how do you deal with something that doesn't exist when it's standing right in front of you? I think that question gets posed throughout the film.
Yeah. Yes. Like the driving force, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it is. From a movie point of view, Landis took particular inspiration from The Wolfman, 1941, starring Lon Chaney, Claude Rains, Bela Lugosi. Other influences, the 1925 film Werewolf of London, which was also the inspiration for the Warren Zevon song.
Yeah.
And he chose London as a setting because he called it Horror Central. He said it was the home of Jack the Ripper, Jekyll and Hyde, so I wanted all that Victorian Gothic. But I also wanted to show the real London of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I think he does that.
Yeah, I think he does that.
Yeah, that comes across well.
Benjamin, have you ever been severely beaten about the face and neck?
No! Finally, we're going to talk about the music in the film. Pop songs play throughout that have a thematic thread, and there's a great Elmer Bernstein score as well. So, Westy, what do you think about the music in the film, score and soundtrack?
The score's great. I really like the score. I love how ominous it is and how unsettling it is in places, and then it's quite quirky. So I think it balances that mix of humour and horror, and he does it really well with the instrumentation and the score. I think it just lingers, almost like, the wolf on the moor. That's how this music feels. It's just there. And even when the piano comes in, it's quite loud in the mix, but then the melodies are quite happy. And then you've got them really dark, dour strings, and it just kind of pulls everything together. And I think it's great because it is quite understated. You wouldn't say, the score for American Werewolf London just blows you away. It doesn't. It just does what all great scores do. And what we always talk about on the podcast is just how well that suits the visuals. And I think this really does suit the visuals. And as for the pop songs in it, well, if it's got Moon in the title, it's fucking straight in there. that's pretty much it. There's 3 iterations of Blue Moon in this. One by Bobby Vinton, Sam Cooke, and then the Marcells at the end. Yeah. And it's got Creedence, Bad Moon Rising, it's got Moon Dance, like we said, by Van der Man. Werewolves of London, why was that not in there? Because it didn't have Moon in the title, that's why. Yeah. But yeah, it's great. I love the pop songs that are chosen for it. Like I say, it is a bit on the nose, but it really works.
I think it works.
It's just got this real ironic sense to it, especially Blue Moon, the way that's played out through the 3 separate times. And then especially when it goes to the credits and you've got the Marcel's version, it's just hey, it's all right. It's only a film. Hope you enjoy yourselves. Fantastic. So yeah, I think from a music point of view, it's pretty strong.
Yeah, Sam Cooke's version of Blue Moon.
Forget about it.
Oh, it's insane.
Forget
those
about
sweet vocals.
Beautiful.
And I've always thought that you've mentioned it there, Wesley. I've always thought, and it was brought up by George Anderson as well. George is one of our patrons. Yeah. I could never fathom why, for years and years, I could never fathom why Warren Zevon's Werewolves of London doesn't feature in the film. I'm doing research for the show. It pops up all the time. David Norton, Griffin Dunn also question why it wasn't in there. But you're right, Westy. It hasn't got the word moon in the title. That's why it's not in there.
That's the only reason.
And putting in Werewolves of London, that's far too on the nose.
It's massively on the nose. It would have been great over the Piccadilly sequence, though, wouldn't it?
It would have been. But yeah, I mean, it's one of my favourite songs. I love it. But it would be too obvious, far too obvious.
Yeah.
What do you think, Matt?
Very much in agreement with you fellas on this one, to be honest. It could have been really, really too on the nose. It could have been like the naffest aspect of the film, putting all the pop songs in with Moon in the title. But they all really work. I love Bobby Vinton's version. It's got this really kind of dreamy, lush quality to it. It is. It's really kind of romantic in a way. And I think that makes it all the more effective when you juxtapose that with obviously what's going on within the film itself. And most of them are obvious, but I think the work because Landis has got a really, really good judgment on when to use them. I think his ability to place a song is absolutely spot on because sometimes it's really funny, sometimes it's really creepy. I mean, that version by the Marcells, that just should be the most inappropriate song for that moment. And yet it works. You can't think of a better song to end on than that. It really does work. And I think the soundtrack is so well used. I tend to forget that there is an original score to this as well. So I'm always a bit surprised when I see Elmer Bernstein's name pop up. I wouldn't say it's anywhere near his best work, but I do really like his werewolf theme. I think that's really creepy. So the original soundtrack, that does a very effective job, but for me, it's all about those pop songs, and I think they're both well chosen and well placed within the film.
Yeah, Elmer Bernstein recorded it in a London church. It's like a really eerie, ominous presence during the scenes, particularly on the movies. I really like that.
Yeah.
Do you know how much music he recorded for the film?
What, in terms of minutes?
Minutes.
An hour and a half.
Matt?
57.
7.
7. Straight in, straight out. He did the opposite of Rick Baker's job.
There's some wonderful facts about some of the songs that Landis wanted, but he couldn't get a hold of. Landis wanted Dylan's cover of Blue Moon, but he declined because of his religious beliefs. He was in the midst of his Born Again period, early 80s.
Right.
And Landis wanted Moonshadow by Cat Stevens to play over the opening titles, but Stevens said no because he thought werewolves were real.
Well, what difference would that make?
It's not going to come after you.
Yeah.
Without Rick Baker's outstanding effects work, we wouldn't be talking about the film, but huge credit must also go to John Landis' script, the song choices, and the score by the ever-dependable Elmer Bernstein.
Indeed.
Yep.
The end.
After David's killing spree, he wakes up fully nude in London Zoo. He makes it back to Alex's flat and feels great. That is until he finds out about last night's mayhem. Now frantic, David tries to get himself arrested in Trafalgar Square before making an emotional phone call home. We're looking at the scene where David is beckoned into the Eros Theatre by a reanimated Jack to see the cinematic classic See You Next Wednesday, where he's joined by a few familiar faces. Matt, you want to take us through this?
Yeah. I mean, it's the last really, truly great joke in the film, isn't it? When they're watching that porno and the guy bursts in and you assume it's the woman he's accusing of cheating on him, but it's the man. Completely wrong foot, yeah. That is so funny.
That is just
really, really
absolute.
funny.
What are you doing here? You promised you'd never do this kind of thing again. And this effete guy whose voice is completely out of place for the film and out of place in the midst of this sexual tryst, he says, "I never promised you any such thing." That's so good. That's so funny.
It is. I love it because you just don't see it.
Not you, your Twitter.
It's also from this moment on that all the humour starts to kind of drain out of the film a bit, and it starts to get quite a bit darker.
Yeah.
Because this is the point, David's accepted his fate. There is definitely going to be no way out for him here. There's no cue coming. There's nothing like that. And even when Jack reappears, and I think that's always going to be like inherently comical, but it's not quite the same kind of laugh that you got from it before. It's just more and more disturbing. So obviously he's getting more and more decomposed. The bit that really stands out for me, and it is still funny, is how polite the dinner party guests are here. I love those guys like, hello. Like, particularly when like the discussion gets on to how David should kill himself. And she's like, sleeping pills, car crash.
A gun.
Just so incredibly polite. That bit is still really funny, but it's that balance, isn't it? Because it is funny, but it's about something really, really horrible.
Yeah.
And I love the other victims in this, though, how well they work. Brinsley, he's still so pompous, and those tramps, they're so pissed off with what happened to them. But you start to see the humanity behind them a bit. And like Brinsley, I think early in the film, he's set up as a bit of a joke character who you don't really care gets killed. But like when he reminds David that, he's left his wife a widow, his children are now fatherless, that starts to hit home. The bits of humour are just really expertly handled because they turn dark quite quickly, but it still really works. And the last bit I love about it is like Jack still standing up for David when like the tramps start to have like a bit of boredom. He's like, "Do you mind? This man's a friend of mine."
Yeah.
I like that throughout this scene, during the conversations with Jack, the people he's recently killed, when he turns into a wolf and mutilates again, it's all scored by this ludicrously sleazy synth porn score, complete with oohs and ahs.
Yes. Yeah.
Really funny that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Westy?
It's one of my favourites in the film, apart from the transformation sequence. I think this is excellent, and I think all the characters are really, really funny. It's just the way the characters are introduced, just one at a time, then there's just more. And this is such a thing. And then there's the very tramp sitting in front of him. It's just brilliantly done. And I really like the dialogue here. I think it's excellent. I don't like that guy's just standing over him and he tells him to go away.
Yeah.
What's that guy doing?
Yeah. Just leave.
Standing there,
Definitely leave.
staring at him. It's like a porn playing in the background, the guy just standing leering at you. I'd want to turn into a werewolf as well, take that guy's head off. What a creep. But yeah, I love it how this escalates. He's made his choice, he's made his decision, he's accepted his fate, and then you get another transformation sequence, which is a lot faster.
Yeah.
But I love the carnage in there. I love it when the police come in and they're just like, Jesus Christ, there's just shit everywhere. It's just destroyed the whole thing. But that film is still on. Just turn it off, put the house lights on. And the fact that he made this See You Next Wednesday, and it was actually an hour and a half long, right? In a full length. and I made the crew watch it, and they didn't actually want to go out and shoot the scenes because we're like, it's not finished yet. So like, made the crew watch the whole thing, which is apparently very, very funny. Then I mean, like the effects work as well. I mean, I know they didn't need Griffin Dunne in the scene with it being animatronic, but it does look fucking excellent. And I like the way that this is darker now. I'm quite happy that it's darker now. I don't want to see him at that stage like fully lit, not at all. And I think seeing the other guys as well in that light really works because you don't get the full kind of impact, and this focuses more on the comedy side of it, even though it's really horrific. But I think this is like the funniest scene in the film easily.
Yeah. I mean, on that, Landis did not need to make a full 90-minute film for this. Not at all. 4-minute scene.
Not at all.
It was the first thing he shot of the film. This film, of course, it was
half the budget on it.
It stars Lindsay Drew, who was a page 3 girl at the time, and page 3 for our overseas listeners were topless models that could be found in daily tabloid newspapers, usually The Sun.
Yep, and building sites.
Yeah, building sites, yeah. Garages.
Yeah. If you look hard enough, you can find them.
I looked into this. It started in the 70s. Do you know when it finished?
Early 90s.
Matt?
No. I would say 96.
I would say sometime this century. I think it was still going well into the 2000s, so 2010.
Oh, Matt, you're very close. 2015. Outrageous. Ooh. This is like a 30p publication that anybody in England can buy. 30.
Of course, Matt knows that. I'm miles away. Pervy Purveson over there. Oh, that was well into this. Actually, I remember using that in about 2015.
Well, that's where my collection goes up to.
But Lindsay Drew, in this film, she went on to have a porn career, something that Landis seemed very happy about. Do you know what her character name is in See You Next Wednesday?
I really don't.
Don't have a clue.
Brenda Bristols.
Do you want to explain that for the American listeners?
Look it up. Cockney rhyme and slang. See You Next Wednesday is something of an in-joke for Landis throughout his career. He first encountered the dialogue in Kubrick's 2001, and it stuck with him for some reason. And he fashioned this fictional film in his head and even made posters as early as 1973. And these posters show up in Ophelia's apartment in Trading Places.
Yep.
And the film, it shows up in one guise or another in the Blues Brothers, Kentucky Fried Movie, Coming to America, Thriller.
Yeah.
Loves it.
That's what I think of when I say 2001 porn.
Yeah. Brenda Bristols.
Yeah, Brenda Bristols. Oh, I can get Brenda Bristols out of this. Kubrick, forever the influence. Lovely.
And just going back to Griffin Dunne, he's had to suffer the misery of additional layers of makeup to show that he's decaying state. But like you said, Westy, he's a puppet. And it may well be a puppet, and I think subconsciously I knew it. But it was only after doing research of the show that it became fully apparent. I mean, of course he is, but it's so well put together. It fits seamlessly with this scene that I just didn't question it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
same.
He was a bit bummed out that he didn't feature in the scene, but he is behind the puppet controlling the mouth to lip sync with his dialogue.
Oh, right. Nice.
Oh, okay.
Landis said that he was working in London in the 70s, and these theatres around Piccadilly were showing cartoons, and that was his original idea, to have Roadrunner playing on the big screen. When he came back to London in 1980, a lot had changed, and all these theatres were now showing all this smut. So he changed it to reflect the times.
Well, that's better. Imagine that. A cartoon that's like full of kids turning into a wheel. No, yeah. That's horrible, that.
Brenda Bristols. Before we get to the final scene, we're going to talk about our final cast member. He shows up at the end and is the voice of reason throughout the film. Matt, what do you think of Jordan Woodvine as Dr. Hirsch?
He's someone from our neck of the woods, isn't he? Which I only found out recently.
Specifically Westy's. He's from Tyne Dock.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not from Tyne Dock.
Well, you're about 5 minutes away.
I'm closer than you guys are, unfortunately.
You're about 5 minutes away.
It's a lovely place, Tyne Dock. Just don't ever go.
I mean, yeah, he's not a main character as such, but I still think he manages to bring a real weight to his performance, I think, and a real weight to that character. And I think he becomes quite integral, to be honest, in terms of the believability of the situation. He's one of those characters who, because he's taking it seriously, the audience takes it as seriously as he does, instead of completely dismissing of what could be happening to David. And he just brings that gravitas to him, which the film really, really needs, I think, and that almost entirely comes through him. So I think he works particularly well in the scenes with Agatha, when they have their scenes together. Mm-hmm. And He's got that kind of presence where I can imagine him being in like a Hammer horror film from the 60s, probably in a similar kind of role. He's just got that kind of vibe to him. So he fits really, really well with the tone of the film. But I also just feel a bit sorry for him. I mean, he schleps all the way up to Yorkshire from London and barely gets a sip of his Guinness.
Yeah, I know.
Good it for him.
Yeah. I adore that scene where he goes to East Proctor. He's got his own little investigation going on. It's possibly my favourite scene in the film. I just love the little hush secrets and that sense that there's something very strange going on.
Yeah.
And that the Doctor could never rationally come to the conclusion that David's a werewolf, but the evidence is that he uncovers points to the contrary. I also like that he orders a Campari soda in the slaughter.
Campari soda, yeah. Brilliant. Just looks at him. They haven't even got tea.
What do you think, Westy?
Yeah, he's great. Second best performance in the film for me. I think he's just, he does add this sense of maturity that it does need in the film somewhere. You do need a character like that to kind of anchor the story and give it a real sense of threat and to know what David's capable of. And he does that, just lets it fester just behind the scenes. Just he's trying to investigate this. He's trying to stop it. You could see him as that kind of doctor who has that curiosity that this could be something that he wants to look at medically or scientifically, which is why he's trying to get David back to him. I think that might have been a good twist if he then could use it for his own gain or whatever else. Yeah. Very much like Burke in Aliens. Yeah. But he would have been able to pull that off. I think if you to see him like turn into something nasty.
I could see him being
like,
sinister.
Yeah, like tied down to like an operating theatre and then he turns on the operating theatre or something. That would have been pretty fucking sweet. But yeah, he adds that element to it. He adds a real weight to the film and he's really believable. And when he wants to be, like you say, Campari and soda, he's really funny.
Amazing.
And looks great in the rain with an umbrella.
Fantastic.
Like really, knocks it out the park.
Hilarious when he's on the phone to his wife and he says, if I survive Rommel, I'm sure I can survive another excruciating evening with Roger Matheson.
Brilliant.
And then that's coupled with the call that he gets when telling them that Matheson's on the phone in Scotland Yard are there. And he says, well, tell him I'm out. Tell him I've passed away. An old war wound. Just tell him I'm dead. Great. John Landis' favourite line in the film is said by John Woodvine. He's talking to David in the hospital and he says, please remain sane at least until you're no longer our responsibility. It's something that Landis said to Norton and done throughout production.
Yeah, brilliant.
So finally, David, now in full wolf mode, busts out of the Eros and causes pandemonium in Piccadilly Circus. Westy, what do you think of this scene?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Just brilliant.
Yeah.
Landis having a really, really good time. He's got to smash cars into other cars because that's what he's used to doing now with the Blues Brothers. So let's do it Piccadilly Circus. It's just absolute carnage. Really good. Good beheading. I enjoy it. I like it as much as I like the one in The Omen.
Yeah, good.
I think it's a really strong head bounce off the car. Wonderful. Yeah. I think the wolf leaves a little bit to be desired. You can tell it's kind of on a wheelbarrow.
Yeah, it is again.
You just see it's like its front legs kind of, pouring across. It lets us down on them levels, but when you see how everyone's reacting to it, it's brilliantly done. It's like, it's not what you see, it's what you don't see, and it's all quite subliminal apart from you seeing, the carnage that's going on, but you're not necessarily focusing on what's causing it. And so it's almost like people's reactions to it are making it fucking far worse than it is. Like, if everyone just backs off and stop like driving your fucking bus into like different people. That's Vic Armstrong, isn't it? The stunt double.
It is, yeah.
The stunt man, he's driving the bus. And it's when that car spins around and kind of pins the guy in between two cars.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's brilliant. It's like, how the fuck did they do that? Like, that looks absolutely real. This is what I was talking about earlier for how to make this film 100 times better.
Listen, Westy's talking, okay?
Are you ready? Have you ready?
Get Paramount on the phone.
Yeah. Get him on the phone. She goes down the back alley, stands in front of the werewolf. That werewolf gives that reaction. It's just slight, isn't it? You see its eyes kind of just get a little bit like soft. That. So you can see David's in there, but it kind of takes over him and pounces. There's a firing squad almost behind her. They're miles away.
Yeah.
He should have pounced forward. They should have shot.
Yeah.
Everyone should have shot. And then she should have turned. I still expect it now. I expected it the first time I'd seen it. If she had been shot, and then when you just see her crying and looking down at David, and then the camera could pan down, she'd been shot through the stomach, and then falls on top of him, and then blood starts to pool around both of them, cut the blue moon there, that would have been fucking massive. She needed to die at the end. I think that would have been amazing. And it could have done another subplot where she's pregnant with his werewolf child, which would have explained the sex scene. And then as she's lying bleeding on the floor, she'd kind of like the turn her over, and then it jumps out, onto the cop and like rips his face off. And then it
Jesus
finishes.
Christ, that's Alien.
Doesn't jump out of her stomach.
Yeah, I mean that's not a bad idea, and I don't know how she doesn't get hit. It's a very narrow pathway.
Yeah, I think it would have been so much better if you just panned down and she'd been shot, and you'd have said, "Oh no," it's almost like, you know, it was a meant to be kind of thing. It would have explained like how her attitude was just so up in the air, and she was just like believing that they're supposed to be together or something. It would have just, I don't know, it would have worked better for me if
possibly.
she died at the end.
I think that's maybe a bit too tragic. Alex doesn't deserve that.
Yeah,
she does.
What?
Trusting this absolute maniac, and then knowing he's a werewolf, and then going after him and trying to stop him when he's a werewolf. She deserves to get shot for it.
Wow.
Westy's law. It's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
Yep.
And don't listen to him. I'm with you, Jenny.
It's not her in real life, Luke.
Matt, what do you think?
I think it's fantastic. I think every scene you've had with the werewolf, it's really carefully managed by Landis and staged because, like I said, with the tube station attack, he doesn't want to give too much of the effects work. Where like Westy, if you look at it too carefully, it's not great. So that's why I think Landis is very careful how he stages it, and he knows exactly how much to show and how much to leave the imagination. So I love that bit where they've just slammed the shutter door shut and it's just pounding on the other side. But you don't cut to it. All you need is the shot from outside the shutter door and that pounding, and you get the sense of how big and powerful this thing is. That's all you need. So I think that's really well done. And I think he does do a good job of putting together that puppet and the POV shots. It's not too much and it's not too little. It's judged just right. What I really like about though, it's all just so short and it's all really brutal.
Yeah.
You know, heads ripped off, cars slamming into people going through windscreens. It's absolute carnage and you feel it all. It all feels really impactful. I do wonder though, if he'd had more money, would he have come up with a more complicated, more like elongated final sequence for it?
It does feel a little bit short, doesn't it?
It does, It does a bit, and I do wonder if that's to do with like budgetary concerns, and if he'd had the money, would he have done something a bit different? But to be fair, I don't feel I'm missing anything from it, even though it does feel a bit short. I'm not like dissatisfied with what I get. It kind of sums up the ethos of the film for me by the fact that as soon as he's shot and you see it's David, bam, we're straight into the credits.
Yeah.
No hanging around, no reaction shots from anyone, just straight out of there.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this already with Agatha and her importance to the ending, but I think it's just worth mentioning again just how good she is in this bit, essentially convincing you that she does have this love for this big puppet that's kind of hidden in shadow. It's almost entirely down to her that I'm as gutted by this ending as I am. So ultimately, I think it's really short, it's really sharp. A bigger film would have had a bigger ending, I think, but I don't think that would necessarily be for the best.
Yeah, I do love that moment where you said, Westy, the werewolf eyes suffer, or the snarl of it softens.
Yeah.
And you think for a second maybe he's recognising, and then it goes back in. I love that. And I also love, I know that it doesn't look too fantastic, the werewolf, when he's set loose on the streets, but that snap sound of its teeth and its jaw is fantastic.
Yeah.
Bodies being ran over, policemen being crushed, cars colliding with each other, that bus doing a 360 and people just flying out the window. That's incredible. And it's John Landis, the bloke who busts through the storefront window.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is it? Oh, no,
yeah,
nice. That.
He used to be a stuntman. I think it's blackly funny when Hirsch tells Alex that there's been like a disturbance in Piccadilly involving a mad dog, and Alex instantly says, David! Great. What I like about the very end of the film is that Alex is grieving and we've seen a dead David, which is not a nice sight because, we've grown attached to him. Sympathetic character. But in the height of all this emotion, bang, it ends. Then the credits come in, the Marcells, doo-wop version of Blue Moon. Landis is saying, ha ha ha, it's only a movie, and you fell for it. Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
Love that. Going back to what you were saying earlier, Matt, it was very difficult to get permits to film in Piccadilly Circus. Nothing had been filmed there for 15 years. And Landis got around this by setting up a free screen of the Blues Brothers for the Met Police Force, 300 people. Landis said they loved it, and what do you know, suddenly I had permission to shoot Piccadilly Circus.
Blues Brothers is massive.
But the film between 1 and 4 a.m. across 2 nights and given permission to block traffic 3 times per day for a maximum of 2 minutes. So that's why it's short and snappy.
Right, okay. If you go into the like frequently asked questions on IMDb, do you look at that much where people kind of ask questions about the film and then other people chip in and try to put the answers in? It's really good because some of these big questions like how does the wolf get out of the door and is it there? And like people try to answer it the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across this one and I was fucking pissing myself. It's amazing.
Okay.
So really articulate. Imagine just reading it and thinking, yeah, this is actually really good. And what you've got to do is you've got to click to reveal the answer on it in the drop-down box, right? So it just leaves you quite open to like, this is good. I wonder what they're going to say. So I've set it up. You'll go.
Okay, brilliant.
Was David actually a werewolf? Or was it all in his head, metaphorically, from suffering a traumatizing, shocking experience from witnessing his friend Jack get killed? And when he's killed at the end, there's no real transformation back to humans. It's not shown. So it's just he's lying there. Was he just going crazy? Was this all in his head? And then the answer is, he was actually a werewolf. Fuck off.
I don't know if you've noticed in the credits, there's a congratulatory message to Prince Charles and Lady Diana's recent wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I've seen that, yeah.
But the reason that it's in there is because David shouts some unsavoury, shall we say, language about Prince Charles when he's trying to get arrested in Trafalgar Square. Yeah. So, sorry, didn't mean it. Congrats. Well done.
Hope that lasts.
So the film ends with a bang. David a bloodied corpse and Alex a blubbering mess. There was an initial mixed reception for cinema goers when American Werewolf first released. The tagline reads, from the director of National Lampoon's Animal House, a different kind of animal, which led some people to think it was a straight-up comedy.
Which it would.
Yeah, literally. After the first attack, there were reports of almost half the audience running out of theatres in fear. When it was finally unleashed on the public, it was a big hit. On a budget of $5.8 million, it returned $62 million worldwide, making it the 8th highest grossing film of the year.
$5.8 million, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
What, small? Big?
For the budget, it's tiny.
Yeah.
For what you see on the screen, I would have just given all of that to Rick Baker.
I think he did.
Yeah,
certainly didn't give it to David Norton.
Well, thankfully not.
From a critical point of view, the film didn't fare fantastically at the time. Roger Ebert gave it 2 out of 4, and he said, An American Werewolf in London seems curiously unfinished, as if director John Landis spent all of his energy on spectacular set pieces and then didn't want to bother with things like transitions, character development, or an ending.
I kind of see where he's coming from.
Fair points, but I think the score's a little bit too harsh.
Yeah, score's harsh, but understandable what he's saying.
Janet Maslin, writing in the New York Times, said, when the movie backfires, which it finally does, it's because too much grisly footage is being used too lightly.
Yeah, well, I can kind of see where they're coming from. But I mean, we watched it at a time where we didn't really care about, all that kind of structural narrative and things linking each. It was just fun. It's just when you see it at that age, it's great.
Yeah. But a critical re-evaluation now sees An American Werewolf in London with a Rotten Tomato score of 88%. And an IMDb rating of 7.5 out of 10. In most recent reviews, Time Out magazine wrote, not just gory but actually frightening, not just funny but clever. American Werewolf has its flaws, but these are outweighed by the film's many mighty strengths. And Empire magazine said, carnivorous lunar activities rarely come any more entertaining than this. Agreed?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, carnivorous lunar activities, yeah. It's very specific.
Very specific, but yeah, it's great.
Yeah, werewolf films.
As mentioned, it was the first recipient of the Best Makeup Award at the 1982 Oscars, and it also won the Saturn Awards for Best Horror Film and Best Makeup. Accolades and success don't always equate to critical greatness. That will come later for An American Werewolf in London, whose place in the annals of the genre is firmly cemented.
Yes.
Sequels and influence.
The influence of An American Werewolf in London was far and wide in the years that followed. It had an immediate influence on the horror genre with comedy horror movies like Evil Dead 2, Gremlins, Night of the Creeps being some highlights. I think this, along with The Thing a year later, really are high points in makeup effects and led to a slew of gross-out makeup in horror and science fiction in the 80s.
Yeah.
Influence of future generations movie directors, we've mentioned Edgar Wright, and outside of movies, Michael Jackson was a huge fan, so much so that he drafted in werewolf team John Landis, Rick Baker, Elmer Bernstein, and cinematographer Robert Painter to make the video for his hit song Thriller. Released around a year after the album of the same name, it was instrumental in popularising the long-form music video and in making the Thriller album one of the biggest selling records of all time. Like people went crazy for it.
Yeah.
There was a BBC radio adaptation made of An American Werewolf in London. And has anybody listened to this?
No.
Definitely not, no.
No. Well, well, it runs longer than the film, and some of the themes and plot threads are expanded upon. Brian Glover, John Woodvine, Jenny Agutter returned to voice their characters, but sadly Dunn and Norton did not. And that is the adaptation's undoing. The guys that they got in as replacements are awful actors, and all they have to do is speak.
Yeah.
And do that badly.
How did they do the transformation on the radio? Just like,
Just a lot of noises, and the sex scene is just like saxophone and do music, and
a shower on in the background.
There's no oohs and ahs. It's just right. They're having sex now, are they? And all the humour's lost in the translation as well. It's just not very good. Norton and Dunn told Landis that not killing David with a silver bullet could turn the film into a franchise, and Landis replied in no uncertain terms that there wouldn't be a sequel. But little did he know that after years of talk, we finally got one. Released in 1997, An American Werewolf in Paris was made without the involvement of any of the original cast and crew. It stars Tom Everett Scott as Andy, an American who travels to Paris with his dickhead buddies.
Is this the first thing of what you think of the film, Luke?
No, I'm just giving a summary of that. This is a copy and paste job from Wikipedia.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, right. From your diary.
And Andy is beguiled by the Parisian charm of Seraphine, played by the usually delightful Julie Delpy. The plot involves some nonsense about David's bloodline and Delpy being his daughter. Westy,
Yeah.
take her away.
When I first saw this, I went to the cinema to see it, and I did enjoy it when I first saw it.
Wow.
And then I watched it back again for this. Well, it was 97, right? It's because of break. So I was, 15, 16? So at that point, it's like, yeah, it's quite exciting. You know, it's horror film, good. Right? Yeah, it's nice. I've seen the original. All right, yeah. It's good. And then I've matured slightly since then, and what a pile of shit. I watched it the other day, and I thought, my Christ, this is really bad. I don't think there's a scene in it that I actually enjoy. I think Tom Everett Scott's pretty good in it, but he kind of overhams it a little. Doesn't quite know what he's supposed to be doing. He's got zero direction. He's good because I love him in That Thing You Do. I think he's great in that. And I do actually like him in this. I think he's a good actor, but he hasn't got a fucking clue what he's doing. So is Del, not a clue what she's doing. The supporting cast are just fucking annoying.
Awful.
Really annoying. Them, the gang of werewolves, they're just so stereotypical and fucking stupid. Not scary, not funny. And yeah, just an utter pile of stinking shit.
Yeah, being polite.
Yeah.
I really hated it. I've just seen it recently just for this, and I wish I hadn't. It's terribly written and directed. The performances are excruciating.
Yeah.
Particularly the three male leads. I just wanted rid of them as soon as I saw them, and the CGI wolves are crap.
Oh, yeah. Terrible.
Crap. It embarrassed itself at the box office where it just broke even of its $25 million budget. $25 million?
What
Jesus the fuck?
Christ. I want me $5 back.
From 24 years ago.
Yeah.
Critically, it's got a score of 5.1 out of 10 on IMDb, 7% on Rotten Tomatoes. John Landis said that he thought the film was lousy. Agreed.
Well, that's polite.
Agreed, John.
Yeah. Well, did you know he nearly did make a sequel, or he was tempted into writing a treatment for one?
Really?
Despite him saying it was never going to be a franchise, he did get as far as doing a treatment because someone quite high up asked him to, and just out of interest, he did it. So, of all people that it's set around, it's set around a character who only gets a passing mention in the film, Debbie Klein.
Really?
Yeah, she becomes the central character because, when David's in Alex's flat by himself, apparently he took the time to write her a letter.
What the
telling
fuck?
Telling her about Jack's feelings for him. So then later, when she graduates college, she becomes a literary agent and gets a job in London. So she takes the opportunity to investigate their deaths. And there's a scene where she finds out Alex is still living in London, and she gets a number for her. She rings her, you go straight to answer phone, and then apparently you would cut, and it would just be David and Jack sat on the couch listening to this message and watching the TV in Alex's apartment.
What the fuck?
What the bloodline's been severed though, hasn't it? Unless he's passed it on to Alex.
The twist is Alex is the werewolf now. That would end up being the big twist.
Nice, I like it.
Yeah, but it got absolutely nowhere.
What?
Yeah,
that's good. Debbie Klein, has she still got a mediocre body?
There's nothing mediocre about Debbie Klein's body.
Oh my god! Well, I'm glad we didn't get that. That sounds terrible. A remake has been talked about for a number of years as well. Most recently, John Landis' son, Max Landis, was said to have written a script and was going to direct. That was maybe 3-4 years ago. With some really unpleasant stories coming out about his despicable behaviour in the last few years, that iteration looks unlikely to happen, definitely for the best.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's likely not the last time we'll hear about a remake, and when it finally gets here, you want to hope and pray that we don't have an American Werewolf in Paris on our hands. That's for goddamn sure.
All the right movies ranking.
Much like the ending of An American Werewolf in London, we've got a killer ending for you here as well. This is where we summarise our thoughts and give the film a score out of 10. So, Westy, take her away.
It's not. I mean, I definitely don't have the the affinity for it that you do, Luke. It doesn't sit with me as one of them that I find comfort in. That's The Shining for me, and kind of always will be. So I can understand your love for it, and that you don't really care about plot holes or it moves at a pace. You just don't give a shit. It's fine. Even David Norton's performance, you're not holding that under the microscope like you'd normally would with every other film that you've watched. So it's so out of character for you to love this so much to the point where you just say, I don't even care who thinks it's shit. But that's how it was made. It was made to be seen like that. So I'm pleased it got to you, and it got to you in the way that it was meant to get to somebody, and I really appreciate that it did for you, but it didn't for me. And watching it again after a fair few years, I mean, it was very, very entertaining. It is loads of fun. It's a great horror film. It's funny, it's violent, but it is a film of its time, and it kind of stays where it was made. I don't really think its views are very progressive. I definitely don't think it's future-proof. I think there's some stuff on there that's quite lazily written and not very well acted. But for fuck's sake, if you just watch it for what Rick Baker brings to it, to be honest, because that's absolute masterwork. It's a masterclass. And just for that reason alone is why it goes to the higher end of the scale, is because of Rick Baker's held this up. And like we've said, there's some really, really good set pieces that have been really well directed, but it feels a bit muddled. It feels a little bit lost. It feels like there's too many things that just don't get wrapped up. And the ending does feel like it was kind of tacked on and just he's down the back alley. All right, shoot him, no problem. So for me, I'm going to give it an 8.5.
8.5. Oh, boo. What about you, Matt?
Shut up, man.
Luke, your face during Westy's end there was absolutely amazing. Just twisting into contempt.
Yeah.
Why didn't I get PI on this one?
Yeah, I could have gone on. I could have done that for another half an hour. Just watching his face contort like he's changing into a werewolf himself. Furious man. Sorry.
No, hey, that's your opinion.
Well, hey, you don't like Barry Lyndon, so in your face.
No, I don't. Matt.
I think it's impossible to not be entertained by this film. There's so much to enjoy in here, whether you want the scares, whether you want the laughs. They're both razor sharp, and it's very easy to see and understand why it's so influential and why it's so beloved by so many people. And I think it does a great job of understanding this mythos of this legendary creature and putting a fresh spin on it, putting it in a contemporary setting, and it really makes it work. Like I said, when I talk about Landis directing it, it feels like this is his film. And out of everything he's ever done, this is the one film where I just can't see anyone else directing it in quite the same way with what he brings to it. And what he brings to it is some wonderful ideas and sequences, brilliant soundtrack, and there are a couple of really good performances in there. But there's also David Norton in there, and he's just not the most likable or interesting of protagonists. And I don't think the writing does hold up to great scrutiny. And it's a film that I think I could watch all the best bits of this film in sequence on YouTube, skip all the middle stuff, and I wouldn't feel like I've missed an awful lot out of it.
Yep.
And that's where I am with it. It's a film of some really great moments that don't quite come together as something excellent all the way through. But it is really enjoyable all the same. I'm always happy to watch it. Those big moments really, really work. So I'm giving this one a 9.
9. Okay, very nice.
0.5 difference to mine. It's a wolf whistle and I get a B. Absolutely ridiculous. For
Got a
0.5
contorted face.
Fucking hell.
I think Matt was just a little bit more kind with his comments, that's all.
Oh, well, okay.
Okay. I don't want to repeat myself. You know how I feel about the film. It's great. I'm not even bothered about the niggles that we've already gone through. And I've been on a roll of giving films top marks recently, and I'm really conscious of that, which made me question what my score for this would be. The reason that I've given 10s recently is because we've covered some of my favourite films.
Yeah.
So this is no different. It's deep-rooted, and I think it always will feel like that for me. It's probably a big reason why I've got such a fondness for the horror genre as well, being there so early on. So it's a 10.
No surprises.
No.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's outrageous, but that's fine.
I know, like, objectively, it's probably I would probably say 9.5.
Yeah.
But it just means something a lot more personal than just looking at it from a critical lens.
Well, you've got to have that. That's lovely.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just like you and Gremlins, Matt.
I knew you were going to bring that up. I knew it. I was sitting here thinking, if I can get through this without Luke bringing up Gremlins again, it'll be a massive victory.
And with our presence on Twitter temporarily on hold, we've turned to our trusted patrons to score an American Werewolf of London out of 10. And here are some comments that I picked out first. Mark Shufflebottom said, one of the first X, or should that be 18 rated films that I saw at the cinema, even though I was only 14 at the time. It scared the crap out of me, made me piss myself laughing at the same time. A 10 all day long. I'm with you, Mark. Right there with you.
Wonder why you picked that one out, Luke.
G. Les said, I was 18 when this came out. I love that it didn't take itself too seriously. The humour was that British understatement with impeccable logic. I think the sudden change in tone were too ahead of its time in 1981, and it has aged very well. The times have caught up to it. And Jenny Agutter, well, excellent choice. Agreed.
Did you write these? Excellent choices.
And finally, Kim Jackson said, inventive and unusual. Today I remember it fondly as a film which made this foreign service kid homesick for London. 9 out of 10. Wonderful words, Kim.
Nice.
Yep, 3 nice positive reviews there.
So on Patreon, An American Werewolf in London got an average score of, what do you think, chaps?
9.
9.5.
9.5. It's Westy, you're on the money. It's 9. 9 out of 10.
All right.
So that gives it a combined score of 36.5 out of 40. Bit low for me, that. Go to...
I'm just going to fix that.
All of these calculators are broken. Okay,
Yeah.
I need some new ones.
Shit. Batteries are gone.
Go to alltherightmovies.com/leaderboard to see how it's doing against the other films that we've covered so far. As we mentioned at the top, to support what we're doing here and get access to exclusive podcasts, you can sign up to be an ATRM patron. You can download the Patreon app or go to patreon.com/alltherightmovies. We would really appreciate that.
Yes, definitely.
For all show notes, credits, and references that were used in production of the podcast, you can visit alltherightmovies.com/podcast/an-American-werewolf-in-London. But need to change that. Need to fix that hyphen thing. Join us next time on All the Right Movies when John, P.I. and Matt will be going behind the scenes on Clint Eastwood's Oscar-winning revival western, The Unforgiven. Should be a good one, Matt.
Should be. Love me a Western, so can't wait to get stuck into that one.
Yeah, lovely.
Nice.
And in between now and then, for our patrons, 23rd of July sees the release of the 4th episode of our double feature podcast, where the three of us here will be honouring the recently departed and sadly missed Richard Donner by talking about The Omen and The Goonies.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Bang, bang. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'd be funny.
In the meantime, you can catch our content across social media, but not on Twitter, obviously. On Instagram, we are at allthe_rightmovies. Search All the Right Movies in Facebook, and our website is alltherightmovies.com. And finally, some advice. Stay on the road, keep clear of the moors, beware the moon. Do all of that, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Yes.
Oh, very nice. Look at that. Telly likes this one. Telly like, get about. Thanks for listening, guys. See you later.
Thank you.